A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather's eyes. The sudden movement from the Empyrean demon cult had filled them with cautiousness. Even a sliver of surprise had appeared on Houston's face because he was not responsible for this. Instead, it was the Empyrean demon orb's own response. This was somewhat beyond Houston's control. Only Fairy Haoyu remained composed, where her face did not change at all. This was the confidence that came from her great strength. However, in the next moment, all their eyes narrowed, including even Fairy Haoyu's. They all stared ahead in surprise. Under the red light from the Empyrean demon orb, the scene before them changed. The stone wall that originally stood before them had actually vanished, turning into long, narrow, and winding passage. It was dark red in there, and it gave off a gloomy presence. What a great formation! I actually completely failed to sense it, Fairy Haoyu frowned. She stared at the winding passageway and murmured. The light in her eyes flickered. She looked at the Empyrean demon orb in thought and doubt. This should be the correct path. Houston stared ahead. After studying it for a while, he called everyone. They advanced under the red glow of the Empyrean demon orb. Along the way, all of them remained within the Empyrean demon orb's range. They discovered that they could only pass through the illusionary formation that even Fairy Haoyu had failed to sense if they remained in there. Once they left its range, a dead end would appear once again. The stone wall that blocked their path seemed completely real, where it felt stiff and heavy if touched. When they passed through the illusionary formation with the Empyrean demon orb, it was like they were leaving their original world and traversing to a completely different place. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to tremble heavily. Its red light began to flicker as well. Swish! Suddenly, the Empyrean demon orb turned into a red streak of light, completely breaking free from Houston's control. It shot off into the distance all by itself. Oh no, I can't control the Empyrean demon orb. Houston's face changed. They were in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, so danger lurked around every corner. If they created too great of a disturbance, they would be exposed. Chase it! Jian Chen called out, and they immediately pursued the Empyrean demon orb. After all, the Empyrean demon orb was a god artifact and one with an artifact spirit. It was impossible for Jian Chen and the other over-gods to chase up to it with its speed. In just a short while, they grew further and further away from the orb. If it were not for the vague connection between Houston and the Empyrean demon orb, they probably would have lost track of it completely. Don't resist, I'll take you with me. At this moment, Fairy Haoyu's voice rang out. With that, gentle moonlight force revolved around the four of them. After that, their speed suddenly exploded, and they pursued the Empyrean demon orb at an extremely terrifying pace. They moved so quickly that Jian Chen and the others were not even able to see their surroundings properly. As a streak of red light, the Empyrean demon orb quickly flew through the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. However, as it was a god artifact, it was unable to move around the headquarters as silently as Fairy Haoyu. As a result, it gave off pulses of energy and the presence of a god artifact as it flew. Naturally, many people discovered it. Who is it? Quite a few shouts rang out in different places within the headquarters. At the same time, powerful senses of the soul swept out from all directions, directly locking onto the flying Empyrean demon orb. It's a god artifact. Whose god artifact is it? Why have I never seen it before? It doesn't belong to our Empyrean demon cult. Oh no, someone has infiltrated the headquarters. Immediately, people flickered in the surroundings. God kings either emerged from secret rooms or space covered by formations. They hurried over from all directions as they pursued the Empyrean demon orb. The headquarters have been infiltrated. Quick, contact the vice leaders. An elder god king hovered in the air. His eyes shone brightly. He locked onto the Empyrean demon orb with the senses of his soul as his voice rang through the entire space. However, the castle was covered in formations inside and there were several spaces. The region where Jian Chen and the others had entered with the help of the Empyrean demon orb clearly belonged to another space within the castle. As a result, the elderly God King's voice only rang through there and not the entire castle. However, even with that being the case, the elderly God King managed to alert all the God Kings around. But at this moment, the white-clothed fairy Hao Yu appeared silently behind the elderly God King. She placed her slender, white hand onto the God King's head and pressed down gently. With a bang, the God King's head exploded loudly. His soul was directly wiped out. He was a mighty God King, yet he had just died like this. He could not put up any resistance at all. He did not even know who has killed him before he died. Fairy Hao Yu hovered in the air. Moonlight force revolved around her. She stared at the surroundings coldly and formed a seal with both hands. A circular palm-sized moon hovered from her hands. The energy it possessed was so terrifying that it was enough to devastate the surroundings. It made Jian Chen and the others pale in shock. In the next moment, the moon suddenly shattered, turning into several dozen finger-sized strands of moonlight force. Like arrows, they shot into the surroundings with frightening might. Spurt! 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 In that space, the moonlight force struck all the God Kings that had revealed themselves without any exceptions. Before they could even cry out, their souls were shattered and dispersed. At that moment, the entire space fell quiet. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shen Jian stood behind Fairy Hao Yu. After personally witnessing Fairy Hao Yu killing so many God Kings with ease, they all felt deeply shocked. Even though they knew primordial realm experts were very powerful, they could not help but feel astonished when they personally witnessed the might of one. These God Kings were not weak. Any single one of them would be far more than what the four of them could handle. They would not even be able to escape. However, they were so weak before Fairy Hao Yu. God Kings were truly like ants. We have already been exposed. The three vice leaders should return very soon, Fairy Hao Yu said gently. Originally, she was confident about infiltrating the headquarters completely silently, without raising any attention. However, the Empyrean demon cult had foiled all of this. However, Fairy Hao Yu did not bicker over the matter. She hurried off with Jian Chen and the others, directly chasing after the Empyrean demon orb. When Fairy Hao Yu caught up to the Empyrean demon orb, the orb had arrived beside an extremely huge pool of blood. The pool of blood really was tremendous. It was like an ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see. Huge waves would churn in the sea of blood, striking the space as waves stretched several hundred meters tall, creating great booms. Chilling winds blew in the sky above the sea of blood. It formed an extremely great swirl. Vaguely, countless faces seemed to appear and wail out. This seemed like living hell. It was terrifying and horrifying. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, Houston, and Sacred Feather stood at the edge of the pool of blood. They gazed at the boundless ocean, and they were all very stern. This should be the greatest secret of the Empyrean demon cult. They're waging wars to create this. Fairy Hao Yu stared at the churning sea of blood. Afterwards, she stared at the whistling winds in the sky, and after a moment of thought, she murmured, "They've created an ocean from blood and condensed 9 blood beads through a formation by absorbing the energy essence from the blood. They've also gathered all the energy from the souls of the death, extracting their essence to refine 9 soul beads through these formations. What is the Empyrean demon cult trying to do? What blood beads and soul beads?" Jian Chen asked. He also studied everything before him, but he found nothing aside from the sea of blood and the chilling winds. There are 9 blood beads that possess great energy at the depths of the sea of blood, while the chilling winds in the air are not actually wind. It's the energy of souls drawn over by formations, and there are also 9 soul beads in the energy of souls. You can't see these things yet with your strength, said Fairy Haoyu. Jian Chen said grimly, has the Empyrean demon cult been waging wars to collect blood and energy of souls to condense these blood beads and soul beads? Why would they do that? Fairy Haoyu shook her head, I'm not certain about this. The essence of energy in the blood beads can allow the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, while the energy of souls in the soul beads can power up a person's soul. However, they're all condensed from low-level cultivators in the end, so the effects are almost non-existent to high-level cultivators. There's no need for the Empyrean demon cult to go to such lengths for all of this with their current strength. Fairy Haoyu looked at the surroundings of the pool of blood, and she became stern. She said grimly, moreover, there's an extremely powerful formation that protects the pool of blood. It's so powerful that it frightens even me. If a person falls into the formation, they're done for even if they're a chaotic prime. It looks like this pool of blood is much more important than anything else in the Cloud Plane branch of the Empyrean demon cult from how powerful the formation is. I really don't think there's anyone else with the ability to cast down such a terrifying killing formation in the Empyrean demon cult apart from their legendary Great Elder. Jian Chen's face changed slightly when he heard Fairy Haoyu mention the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. He stared at the pool of blood and said grimly, did the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally create this place? The Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult was an existence that even the peak clans of the Cloud Plane feared. If it were not for his deterrence, it would be impossible for just the 3 infinite prime vice leaders of the Cloud Plane branch to create such a great disturbance. As a result, as soon as he heard that the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally created this place, Jian Chen struggled to keep his composure. At this moment, the boundless sea suddenly became even more turbulent. Even the chilling winds formed from the tremendous energy of souls grew stronger. The light in Fairy Haoyu's eyes flickered. She stared at the sea of blood ahead and said, the Empyrean demon cult is currently massacring lives. They're using all those lives to condense the 9 blood and soul beads so that the 9 blood and soul beads can constantly absorb the essence from the sea of blood and the energy of souls to reach higher qualities. If these blood and soul beads aren't removed, the massacre of the Empyrean demon cult will not stop. They will continue until the beads reach a state that they are satisfied with. Fairy Haoyu, can we remove these 9 blood and soul beads so that the Empyrean demon cult won't continue like this? Jian Chen asked. Fairy Haoyu shook her head powerlessly. She sighed gently, the formation that protects this place is too powerful. I am powerless before it. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb that originally floated there without moving suddenly arrived above Houston. A blood-red light fell from the orb, completely surrounding Houston. Houston had already established a vague connection with the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb. When the light covered him, a thought from the artifact spirit entered his head at the same time. Houston's face froze before becoming surprised. He raised his head and stared at the Empyrean demon orb with some astonishment. After a moment of hesitation, he said to everyone, the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that I can directly ignore the obstructions of the formation and enter the place. Fairy Haoyu's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, she turned towards Houston, or more accurately, the Empyrean demon orb above Houston. After staring at it for a while, she said to Houston, you must know that the formation is so powerful that even chaotic primes may die. If you really do enter the formation as the artifact spirit has said, even I won't be able to save you once your life is in danger. Uncle Xiao, you must not risk it. Jian Chen voiced his objection. He deeply understood just how terrifying the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult was. He also did not believe a god artifact would be able to cross through a formation cast down by an expert that powerful. That was unless the Empyrean demon orb possessed great origins, making it almost heaven-defying like the Inata Tower. However, he had heard that the Empyrean demon orb was just the famed treasure of the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. Although it was a god artifact, it was still quite far off from the apex. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather both tried to stop Houston as well. They did not want Houston to take this risk, where he would have to leave his life to the hands of an artifact spirit that could easily run off by itself. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared from behind them. All the spaces in the headquarters gently trembled at that moment, giving off tremendous pressures. All the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult had been activated at that moment. Countless formations interlinked with one another, forming an extremely tremendous killing formation in the end. The killing formation surrounded the entire castle. The 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult have returned. They've activated all the formations. Fairy Haoyu stared backwards and said with composure. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shenzhen were unable to remain as cool as Fairy Haoyu. Their hearts all sank, and their faces became extremely stern. There's no time. Let me try to see whether I can get through the setup here, Houston said firmly. He ignored everyone's attempts at persuading him. With determination, he entered the formation without looking back. Aside from the fact that he wanted to ruin the Empyrean demon cult's plans of creating the blood and soul beads, there was another factor to his actions, and that was the artifact spirit. Houston understood that there was something extremely important to the artifact spirit here through communicating with the artifact spirit. At the same time, there was a huge fortune for himself. With the Empyrean demon orb over his head, Houston used the Empyrean demon arts. Demonic aura wrapped around him, and he had already entered the terrifying killing formation that protected the pool of blood. As soon as he set foot in the killing formation, terrifying killing intent permeated the surroundings. Just the killing intent had almost torn Houston into shreds. If it were not for his Empyrean demon arts and the Empyrean demon orb above his head, he would probably fail to even endure the killing intent. Jian Chen, Shenzhen, and Sacred Feather all stood outside the formation as they stared at Houston nervously. However, they could not help but let out a sigh of relief when they saw how the killing formation did not attack Houston as he advanced through it with great difficulty. At the same time, the 3 of them felt extremely doubtful. Why was such a powerful killing formation rendered useless before Houston? Fairy Haoyu stared at the Empyrean demon orb above Houston's head without blinking at all. Surprise filled her face. She understood just how terrifying the killing formation was more than anyone. It was enough to kill chaotic primes, yet Houston, who was just an over-god, was actually able to move through it as he wished by relying on a god artifact. This shocked her greatly. The Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, the Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, Fairy Haoyu murmured as the light in her eyes flickered. As Houston advanced through the killing formation with great difficulty, he was like a dead leaf in the wind, swaying from side to side. Even though the killing formation did not activate, the invisible killing intent that filled it was still difficult for him to endure. He basically needed to use all the strength that his body could provide to take each step. As a result, he advanced at an extremely slow rate. At this moment, 3 figures shrouded in demonic auras gathered together within the headquarters. We've searched through the entire headquarters, but we've failed to find any intruders. At the same time, we activated the formation as soon as possible, so it's impossible for them to escape here without us sensing it. Where are they hiding? One of them growled. If Jian Chen was present, he would directly recognize this voice as Huaiyan's. Then maybe the intruders have gone to the forbidden grounds, said Yi Huaiyue, who was wrapped up in a demonic aura. Her voice was slightly weak. After she finished speaking, there was a fit of coughing. Clearly, she was injured. The forbidden grounds? Impossible. Huaiyan and the other vice leader cried out after they heard Yi Huaiyue's words. The demonic aura around them began to churn violently as well. If their faces were visible, it would be quite evident that as soon as they thought that the intruders might have entered the forbidden grounds, their faces had paled. Soon, the three of them moved, flying as quickly as they could towards the forbidden grounds. Even though they did not believe the intruders would be able to find the hidden forbidden grounds, even though they knew the Great Elder had personally cast down supreme formations there, they still did not dare to be careless. They would rather believe it than dismiss it. This was because they deeply understood just how important the forbidden grounds were. Once anything happened to the forbidden grounds, the Great Elder would never spare them. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather were all relieved as they stood by the pool of blood. Houston had already passed through the killing formation successfully, arriving above the pool of blood safely despite the fright. Afterwards, he directly dove into the sea of blood below under the protection of the Empyrean demon orb, disappearing from the vision of Jian Chen and the others. On the other hand, Fairy Haoyu raised an eyebrow. She looked behind and said, "The three vice leaders are currently hurrying over. Stay here and don't come out. I'll go stop the three of them. Remember, if you don't want trouble, you can't reveal yourselves before them." With that, Fairy Haoyu van at the same time, primordial realm laws permeated the side of the pool, completely erasing their presences. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather hid their presences with their full strengths as well. They did their best to hide themselves as they stared at the sea of blood nervously and anxiously. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. There were 9, thumb-sized, red blood beads in his hands. Each bead was translucent and extremely bright, shining with dazzling red light. It seemed like pieces of red quartz. However, each bead pulsed with extremely powerful energy that was enough to surprise over-gods and even make the expressions of God-kings change. The energy within the 9 beads was just too powerful. If it erupted at that moment, it would be enough to unleash devastating might, easily killing over-gods. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather all noticed the 9 blood beads in Houston's hands. They all became very stern. These 9 beads should be the blood beads condensed from the essence of blood that Fairy Haoyu mentioned. The Empyrean demon cult has put in so much effort into condensing these blood beads, but they've all been taken away by Uncle Xiao, so there'll definitely be a great disturbance from the Empyrean demon cult. Jian Chen's heart was rather heavy. He could tell just how important this place was to the Empyrean demon cult from the formations here. Or in other words, he could tell just how important this place was to the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. If the Great Elder personally came to the Cloud Plane, he would not be able to imagine the outcome. After taking the 9 blood beads, Houston was just about to leave. Suddenly, he froze slightly and looked at the sky. He looked at the tremendous swirl formed by the chilling winds. After hesitating slightly, he slowly flew up into the sky while the red light from the Empyrean demon orb protected him. Very soon, he disappeared into the tremendous swirl. When he appeared again, another 9 beads of similar sizes had appeared in his hands. They were dark beads. Inside the dark beads was an extremely powerful and pure energy of souls. Now, all 9 soul beads and blood beads had ended up in Houston's hands. At this moment, there was a flash. Fairy Haoyu had returned to their side. When she saw the 18 beads in Houston's hands, her eyes narrowed as well. She said grimly, "The true upper echelons of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be alerted now that they've lost the blood and soul beads. It might even alarm the Great Elder directly. We can't stay here for long. We must leave as soon as possible. The Empyrean demon cult will probably do something big afterwards." Houston also understood the severity of the matter. After taking away the 9 blood beads and soul beads, he directly flew out, passing through the formation just like before, where it was frightening but not dangerous. However, passing through the formation was extremely difficult for Houston. When he emerged, the terrifying killing intent in there had almost made him collapse. His face was ashen. Fairy Haoyu was stern. With a flip of her hand, the bright moon divine hall appeared, and she said, "Enter the divine hall quickly. We need to leave as soon as possible." The four of them did not hesitate at all and immediately entered the bright moon divine hall. Fairy Haoyu stowed the divine hall away and used the laws of the primordial realm to erase the presences and traces they left behind. Then, she disappeared with a flash, making her way out of the castle with lightning speed. All the formations in the castle had been activated by now. Countless formations stacked upon one another, interlocking together into one, causing the security of the entire castle to become virtually impenetrable. Fairy Haoyu's face was cold as her eyes shone with a sharp light. A terrifying presence enough to frighten the world emanated from her. A layer of moonlight covered here as she directly collided against the formation with the power of laws from the primordial realm. Boom! The entire castle trembled from that. Even though the killing formation in her way had combined with all the formations, it still cracked before Fairy Haoyu's powerful strike, directly collapsing. Fairy Haoyu did not slow down at all. She continued to give off a soaring presence, ramming her way through layers upon layers of formations that blocked her way like she was unstoppable. She retreated from the castle quickly. Even though the castle's defenses had made it virtually impregnable from both the inside and the outside, there were no killing formations that could stop Fairy Haoyu in the entire castle apart from the ones that protected the pool of blood. Even when all these formations interlinked with one another, resulting in a drastic increase in strength, it was still unable to stop Fairy Haoyu. At that moment, the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult that all the infinite primes on the cloud plane feared and did not dare to approach was like the back garden of her own house to Fairy Haoyu. It was unable to stop her at all. Boom! At this moment, a heavy sound suddenly rang out through the entire castle. Fairy Haoyu formed a seal with her hands, using a technique to smash through the many layers of formations with her full strength, creating a hole in the castle. Afterwards, she emerged from there and completely vanished. At the same time, shackles condensed from moonlight force trapped the three vice leaders in there. Their bodies were bound, completely immobilizing them. At this moment, the demonic aura around the three of them pulsed violently. They roared out at the same time, and under their full strength, they finally reduced the shackles around them to pieces. Then, they vanished from there silently. When they appeared once again, they had arrived before the hole that Fairy Haoyu had created. The three of them stared at the hole, and their faces became extremely sunken. This castle is a god artifact with extremely great defenses. Only chaotic primes can smash through this. Once we activate all the formations in our headquarters, even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes can't escape, yet we were unable to stop this person at all. Which chaotic prime is this person? Let's go to the forbidden grounds quickly. The chaotic prime who intruded on our headquarters stayed there for quite a long time. With that, the three of them vanished at that moment. When they appeared again, they had arrived beside the blood pool. They stood outside the formations. Fortunately, the formation is fine. The Great Elder cast down this formation after all. Even if that person possesses the strength of a chaotic prime, it's still impossible for them to smash through it. The three of them all let out a sigh of relief when they saw that the formation was completely fine. They could ignore the fact that a chaotic prime had infiltrated their headquarters and killed so many god kings. They could even ignore the fact that there was a huge hole in the castle now. This was because all they needed to do was report the matter, and the higher-ups would send someone to deal with this chaotic prime. The only thing they could not allow was for anything to happen to the blood beads and soul beads in the forbidden grounds. However, when Huayan subconsciously glanced at the depths of the blood pool, his face suddenly froze. It began to pale instantly as he felt intense disbelief. He cried out, Why are the blood pearls gone? The two other vice leaders were greatly surprised as well. They all glanced at the pool of blood. With that, blood instantly drained from their faces. They had almost been frightened to death. Oh no, the soul beads are gone as well. Huayue said with a trembling voice. At that moment, the three vice leaders all felt rather lightheaded. They had almost lost their footing and tripped. Fear filled their hearts. How? The blood beads and soul beads are all gone. How do we explain this to the higher-ups? Q, quick. Report to the Grand Elder. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plane, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plane, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. The divine hall seemed to be able to rule over an entire region. Even the independent, unknown space seemed to bow down before it, kneeling at the divine hall's feet. At this moment, two balls of light suddenly appeared in a silent, dark secret room at the top of the divine hall. They tore through the darkness like two bolts of lightning, giving the dark room some light. The Empyrean Demon Orb. This is the presence of the Empyrean Demon Orb. Ning Shuang, have you come to the saint's world? A trembling, excited voice suddenly rang out in the pitch-black room. It was filled with reminiscence. The two balls of light that had suddenly appeared were actually a pair of eyes that shone brightly. It was even possible to vaguely make out a figure seated in the secret room from the two balls of light. A large body sat there, giving off a terrifying presence that seemed to be enough to make the sky collapse. How many years, just how many years has it been? I've finally waited till this day. I've already prepared everything in the saint's world. Ning Shuang, we can meet again very soon. The voice filled with reminiscence rang out once again. After 1,000,000 years of preparation, 1,000,000 years of arduous effort, and 1,000,000 years of bitter waiting and eagerness, it was finally happening. Even though the owner of the voice had already forged a heart that would not tremble even if the universe was destroyed, it shook uncontrollably at this moment. He had waited far too long for this day. Master, this one has important matters to report. At this moment, an elderly voice suddenly rang out from outside the secret room. It was filled with respect. Silently, a black-robed old man had appeared outside the secret room. The old man's eyes were deep as if the boundless outer space was hidden in there. As a matter of fact, there seemed to be endless laws interweaving with one another in his eyes as if the ways of the world were resonating. It was like a tremendous universe was evolving in there. Moreover, the presence that the old man gave off from time to time was enough to shock the world. The old man was extremely powerful. However, he stood outside the secret room politely with his head lowered. Respect had filled his face. Is it about the branch on the cloud plane? The voice in the secret room rang out. Exactly that. Master, this one has just received the news that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the branch on the cloud plane has used countless years to condense have been taken away by an unknown chaotic prime, the old man said politely. I know this already. You can go. The mission of the branch on the cloud plane has been completed, said the person in the secret room. The old man was slightly surprised when he heard that. Afterwards, he bowed politely and said, This one understands. This one bids you farewell. With that, the old man vanished silently. In the secret room, the person with the glowing eyes began to murmur once again, since the Empyrean Demon Orb has appeared in the saint's world, they must have come up as well. Sigh, it's just a pity that my original body is still trapped. This clone cannot advance to the cloud plane. The old man directly made his way to a hall after he departed. 7 people had already been waiting there for him. These 7 people also possessed powerful presences. They were all experts of the primordial realm. "Greetings, Grand Elder." The 7 people all bowed when they saw the old man. Respect filled their faces. Soon afterwards, one of them said, "Grand Elder, according to the images and sketches from the 3 vice leaders from the branch on the cloud plane, we've basically found out who the intruder is. She should be Hao Yu, the person who was ranked 3rd on the God King's throne several 100,000 years ago. Hao Yu is extremely powerful. It's said that when she was a God King, she killed an infinite prime. Her current strength is even greater now. Even if us 7 elders fight her together, we probably would not be able to defeat her," said a beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed natural charm, where her actions could invoke an irresistible sense of desire. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared. As if it could squash the sky, it enveloped the entire hall with a terrifying might. Aside from the Grand Elder, the expressions of the 7 other powerful primordial realm experts changed with the appearance of the pressure. The 7 of them felt like they were suffocating from the pressure. They even felt like the surrounding space was pressing down on them. "Grand Elder, do you need me to set out and capture the intruder of the branch on the cloud plane?" A deep voice rang through the hall. It was cold and merciless, icy and terrifying. The Grand Elder stood there indifferently, where it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. "No need. The mission of the branch on the cloud plane has already been completed. We don't need to interfere with the matters there too much, just in case it foils Master's grand plan." The 7 elders looked at one another before accepting the orders. The terrifying pressure that engulfed the entire hall vanished with what the Grand Elder had said. Princess Tian sat in her own residence within the imperial palace of the Xi Empire in the northern region of the Cloud Plain. In her hands, there was an embroidered box that she played around with. She was very much curious about it. "Just what is Jian Chen giving to my aunt and uncle? He acted so mysteriously about it, and he even said that my aunt and uncle might like it," Princess Tian murmured softly. However, she did not open the box. She said with some annoyance, "It's a pity that it has been so many days, and aunt and uncle have yet to return. I wonder when I can give this box to aunt. And aunt has been in a rather bad mood recently. Jian Chen is a supreme over-god, so aunt and uncle should accept a gift from him, right?" Princess Tian felt rather uneasy inside. Looking at the box, she did not feel confident about giving it to them. "Your Highness, the Emperor and Empress have returned." At this moment, a female servant's voice rang out from outside. With that, Princess Tian's eyes lit up. She put the box away in her space ring and immediately ran out. In the Xi Empire, it was an extremely difficult matter for many of the princes and princesses to see the Emperor and the Empress. There were even some princes and princesses who would never even hold a conversation with the Emperor or the Empress. However, Princess Tian was an exception. Her status in the Xi Empire was extremely special. She could visit the Emperor and Empress whenever she wished. Sienna greets aunt. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely, without appearing stiff for rules at all. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely, without appearing stiff for rules at all. Before her stood a graceful, dignified woman behind a screen. The screen obscured her appearance, only revealing a blurry figure. She was the Empress of the Xi Empire. "Oh, it's Sienna. I've just returned, and you've come to see me. You sure receive news fast," the Empress said from behind the screen. Her voice was kind and filled with warmth. "A lot of things have happened in the Empire during this time. I was afraid that aunt's mood would be affected, so I especially came to spend some time," said Princess Tian. She seemed considerate, and at the same time, there was a sense of concern in her voice. Sigh, the Empress sighed gently as if there was something indescribable and sorrowful affecting her mood. She seemed rather dispirited at that moment and said, "Xianer, come. Let's talk." "Yes, Aunt." Princess Tian slowly made her way over and went around the screen, sitting beside the Empress liberally. "Oh right. Aunt, in the days that you were gone, an extremely surprising supreme overgod appeared in our northern region," said Princess Tian. The light in her eyes flickered as she paid close attention to the Empress' face. Seeing how the Empress did not react too violently, she continued, "Although this supreme overgod isn't a member of our northern region, he really is powerful. I think there's probably no one in the entire northern region that can rival this supreme overgod because he can defeat a god king as an overgod. I also heard that the god king was no ordinary god king, but the disciple of a large sect from the Xiandao Empire. What is even more surprising is after the overgod defeated the god king, he was not injured at all. Aunt, don't you think this overgod is powerful?" The Empress' expression remained the same. She nodded slightly, "To fight a god king as an overgod and achieve victory. That's right, he is indeed a supreme overgod with surprising potential. This strength might even be enough to rival the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque. Even Aunt thinks so. Hee, I also think that this supreme overgod has the right to challenge the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque." Princess Tian smiled sweetly. Soon afterwards, she seemed to think of something, and she suddenly took out an embroidered box from her space ring. She said, "Oh right. Aunt, when I visited this supreme overgod last time, he said to give this box to Aunt or Uncle." Reaching this point, the princess paused. She stared at the box in her hand and said in thought, "Inside must be a gift from the supreme overgod for Aunt and Uncle." The Empress frowned when she heard that. She said, "Xianer, how can you accept anyone's gift for me? It's not like you don't understand this. You better return this box to that person." The Empress left no room for argument with how dignified her voice was. The princess became slightly troubled. When she thought about how stern Jian Chen was when he gave the box to her, she understood that the item inside would definitely be special. However, she understood the temperament of the Empress extremely well. Since the Empress was unwilling to take the gift, anything she tried would be a futile effort. "Yes, Aunt. I understand." The princess became rather dejected. She stowed the box away unhappily and left the Empress' residence before long. However, the princess did not forget what Jian Chen had told her before. She only needed to give it to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. Since the Empress did not want it, she went to find the Shi Emperor. With Princess Tian's status, seeing the Shi Emperor was naturally no problem. Very soon, she arrived in the Shi Emperor's study room. When Princess Tian met the Supreme Emperor of the Shi Empire, the famed ruler who had basically caused an upheaval through the entire empire when he ascended to the throne, was sitting back in a precious chair sculpted from crystal that had depictions of dragons. He propped up his forehead with one hand as he rested. However, there was heavy exhaustion on his dignified and resolute face. "It's Xianer. Xianer, is there anything you need me for?" the Shi Emperor said. His voice was filled with warmth. He did not move his posture in the chair at all. He did not even open his eyes. At that moment, the Shi Emperor no longer possessed his usual coldness or his usual awe. He only seemed like a lonely and injured soul. "Uncle," Princess Tian hesitated when she saw how exhausted the Shi Emperor was. She originally wanted to give Jian Chen's box to him, but she found it rather difficult to bring herself to do something like that after seeing how exhausted he was. Uncle's lost daughter has always weighed on his heart during these years. He is mentally and psychologically torn. Now that he has finally gotten some time to rest, am I really going to disturb him? The princess thought. In the end, she sighed inside and did not choose to take out the box at this time. Fairy Hao Yu had returned to the Tian Yuan clan in the Dong'an province with Jian Chen and everyone else. They had originally departed soundlessly, without raising any attention, so they did the same when they returned. There'll probably be a lot of movements from the Empyrean demon cult soon since they lost the 9 blood beads and soul beads. You have to be careful. You mustn't reveal any traces at all, or no one will be able to save you. Fairy How You personally cast down a barrier in a secret room deep underground and warned them sternly. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb suddenly drifted out of Houston's sea of consciousness. It shone with dazzling red light. In the next moment, 10 thumb-sized beads drifted out. The 10 beads were 5 soul beads and 5 blood beads. They drifted towards Jian Chen, Houston, Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Fairy How You. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that it's gifting these blood beads and soul beads to everyone to thank you all for your help. Houston passed on the artifact spirit's message. Although these blood beads and soul beads were condensed from the blood and energy of souls from countless lives, the beads have already become the purest crystal after the formations refined them for so many years. As a result, absorbing the energy from them won't leave any side effects behind. Fairy How You stared at the blood beads and soul beads and studied them seriously. She nodded, that's right. The beads have already been refined for so many years that all factors of evil and unstable elements have been eliminated. The beads have become great nourishment, which can increase your strength by quite a lot. Fairy How You glanced at Jian Chen when she said that. Afterwards, she swung her arm and sent the beads that had drifted before her to Jian Chen. She said, "These beads are useless to me. You take them." Jian Chen looked at the beads. He hesitated. Although the blood and soul beads were extremely nourishing, enough for the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, they were still condensed from the essence of blood and energy of souls from countless people. To him, only demonic cultivators would use objects like this to cultivate. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jian Chen, they did not accept the beads. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jian Chen, they did not accept the beads. A while later, Shenzhen said, "Although I'm not a part of any righteous way, I don't belong to any demonic path either. The Empyrean demon cult has slaughtered countless individuals, using their lives to condense these beads. Even if they can greatly increase the cultivation of a person, would be no different from a person who walks the demonic path if I use them." With that, the 2 beads before Shenzhen returned to Houston. He said sternly, "Houston, these things don't suit me. However, you practice a demonic cultivation method, so there should be nothing wrong with you using it. As a result, I'll gift these beads to you." Shenzhen had spoken these words firmly. Even though the beads could greatly increase his cultivation, they did not entice Shenzhen at all. Shenzhen is right. These beads are indeed unsuitable for us. After all, we do not walk a demonic path of cultivation while our cultivation methods aren't from a demonic path either. If we use something that was condensed from the blood and souls of countless lives to cultivate, it'll affect our mental state. If it's severe, it might even lead to inner demons, which will affect our future cultivation. Jian Chen also gifted his beads to Houston. Even though formations had refined the beads, removing all the evil and unstable impurities from them, their origins were still a little too vicious. Jian Chen had his morales. If the beads came from magical beasts or other vicious beasts, he would naturally have no problem with them. After all, he had already accepted such an idea. However, the beads did not come from magical beasts, so he was unable to accept it. "I don't need it either. Uncle Xiao, it's best if you take them for yourself," said Sacred Feather as well, giving his beads to Houston. Houston looked at the 4 soul beads and blood beads that hovered before him. After hesitating slightly, he said, "All right then. Since you all don't need it, I won't hold back. I'll accept them for the Empyrean demon orb for now." These items are very useful to the Empyrean Demon Orb. Why would a god artifact need these items? Fairy Haoyu stared at Houston and asked steadily. Houston shook his head. Actually, I find this very strange as well. The Empyrean Demon Orb has simply surprised me too much in our trip to the headquarters. Fairy Haoyu stared at Houston deeply and said, Your Empyrean Demon Orb is probably not as simple as it seems. I'd tell you to use it as little as possible, and if you can, abandon it, just in case it dooms you. Houston immediately became solemn. He knew that as a terrifyingly powerful primordial realm expert, Fairy Haoyu definitely would not give groundless advice. Afterwards, Fairy Haoyu looked at Jian Chen again. She said, I'm going to leave. What happened in the Empyrean demon cult will definitely alarm the upper echelons. If I stay, it'll only lead to more trouble for you. You have to be careful in the future. With that, Fairy Haoyu hesitated slightly. Afterwards, she said to Jian Chen secretly, I suspect that the Empyrean Demon Orb is somehow connected to the Empyrean Demon Cult, but I don't know whether it's good or bad. Jian Chen nodded slightly to show that he understood. In reality, he also had suspected that. After all, the formations that guarded the blood beads and soul beads were so powerful that even chaotic primes would probably be doomed if they entered, yet the Empyrean Demon Orb was able to move through such terrifying formations freely. It simply did not make sense. If the Empyrean Demon Orb was a god artifact that specialized in suppressing formations, it would be explainable at the very least. However, Jian Chen had learnt from the sword spirits that the Empyrean Demon Orb was the famed treasure of the strongest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean Demon Monarch. It could both attack and defend, but there were no rumors of it being able to suppress formations. As a result, this could only be explained as the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean Demon Cult had been set up in a special manner, where they would be useless against the Empyrean Demon Orb. However, the part that Jian Chen did not understand was that one came from the demon's world, while the other was in the saint's world. Why would they be connected? Jian Chen did not think too much of the name, as who knows how many people who shared the same names and surnames existed in the world. It just happened too frequently. After a simple farewell, Fairy Haoyu vanished silently from the secret room. In the secret room, Jian Chen had stated his doubts over why the Empyrean Demon Orb could move through the formation so easily. Unfortunately, Houston also had no idea because he had only been following the orders of the artifact spirit in the Empyrean Demon Orb. However, when Houston asked the artifact spirit, it told him that it had seen the formations before, so it knew the method to go through them. Clearly, everyone did not believe this answer, as Houston and the artifact spirit had never undergone any procedure to get through the formation. Instead, they had directly swaggered in, passing through in a straight line. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean Demon Orb is hiding secrets from us, thought Jian Chen. Then, he took our space ring and passed it to Houston. He said sternly, Uncle Xiao, it's no longer safe for you to stay here with the soul beads and blood beads. There are some divine crystals in there. You have to go to the Heavenly Moon Empire as soon as possible and then go to the Blood Sun Empire through a teleportation formation there. Then, you need to use a regional teleportation formation to go to the central region. The central region is much more powerful than the 4 other regions. You should be much safer there, so use this opportunity to increase your strength. Houston also understood the severity of the matter. He did not turn down Jian Chen's offer. He immediately left the Tian Yuan clan after bidding farewell to everyone. He had obtained the blood and soul beads, so the matter that took priority was naturally increasing his own strength as soon as possible. Now that the Empyrean Demon Cult had lost such treasures, it would be extremely likely that they would send even more terrifying experts here. The senses of the souls from primordial realm experts were so terrifying that no matter how well he hid in the southern region, he would not be able to escape a primordial realm expert search. Once the beads were exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Houston left through the teleportation formation in the forbidden grounds of the clan. In order to avoid any suspicion, Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather immediately charged for the front lines. Now, the ceasefire period was just about to end. A huge army had gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom once again, standing on the reconstructed walls in the face of the enemy. The soldiers of the three armies gathered several dozen kilometers away from the fortress. Where they gathered, demonic aura formed thick, black clouds, causing the world there to descend into darkness. On the castle walls, many god kings gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. However, their attitudes towards Jian Chen had changed drastically when they saw him this time. They all greeted him with smiles. Jian Chen looked at them and discovered some unfamiliar faces. After a simple introduction, he learnt that they were reinforcements from the empires in the southern region. However, their enthusiasm left Jian Chen rather troubled. Even if they knew there was a primordial realm expert behind him, there was no need for them to behave like this. Jian Chen, I never thought you would defeat a god king in the northern region. That really was shocking. The Divine King made his way over and smiled at Jian Chen. Only with that did Jian Chen understand. His victory over a god king in the northern region had already spread to here. Look, the Empyrean demon cult seems to be retreating, a god king said in surprise from the castle walls. Everyone immediately redirected their attention away from Jian Chen, staring up ahead at the camp of the three armies. With their eyes, they were naturally able to see what was happening several dozen kilometers away clearly in such an open area. Jian Chen also clearly saw the three armies camped there. They were actually retreating at this moment, gradually disappearing from everyone's view. Chapter 1963, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect, 1. The Empyrean demon cult's sudden retreat had greatly confused the god kings who stood on the wall. After half a month of preparation, they were all ready for battle. They had made up their minds to fight a prolonged battle against the Empyrean demon cult. However, just when the agreed ceasefire was about to end, and they were about to continue their war, the Empyrean demon cult that had the upper hand was suddenly retreating. This surprising move had bewildered the god kings on the walls. They had no idea why this was happening. Even the Divine King revealed doubt and confusion as he stared at the armies that had already retreated into the distance. They've retreated? The Empyrean demon cult is just going to retreat like this? Surely there isn't some scheme involved, right? A god king said from the walls as he watched everything unfold with quite some disbelief. I know how the Empyrean demon cult acts extremely well. With the support of the Great Elder, the Empyrean demon cult can rampage as they wish on the cloud plane. They can destroy whatever they want. It's exactly because of the Great Elder behind them that the powerful organizations on the cloud plane dare not to lay their hands on the Empyrean demon cult. As a result, the Empyrean demon cult has created several storms of blood in the past several tens of thousand years, committing atrocities of massacres. In particular, the invasion this time could be regarded as unprecedented. Not only were all 9 armies mobilized, but they even attacked 3 regions at the same time and even their vice leaders set out. This is extremely rare. They would never retreat so easily unless their goals were fulfilled, said a sagely old man with a duster. That's right. The retreat of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be more complicated than it seems. We can't become careless, said another god king. The god kings on the walls all stated their thoughts and guesses. However, none of them believed the Empyrean demon cult was truly retreating. Even the Divine King thought of it like that. This was because the Empyrean demon cult was used to using force. Coupled with the size of their army this time, it was impossible for them to retreat willingly unless they caused a massacre enough to shock the entire cloud plane based on how they acted in the past. Among them, only Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather knew that the retreat of the Empyrean demon cult was not for some ulterior motives or schemes. They were really retreating. However, Jian Chen also had no idea how long the 9 armies would remain inactive. He understood the secret behind why the Empyrean demon cult had been declaring wars everywhere from his trip to the headquarters. Now that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the Empyrean demon cult had spent who knows how long on had been stolen, there were only 2 possible actions they could take next. First, they could give up on the wars and devote themselves to finding the blood and soul beads. Secondly, they could continue waging wars and condense the beads again. I hope Uncle Xiao can reach the central region safely. It's just a pity that I don't have enough 5-colored divine crystals on me. Otherwise, I would have gotten Uncle Xiao to directly leave the cloud plane and go somewhere else. It would be even safer with that, thought Jian Chen. He could only pray for Uncle Xiao right now, as he was unable to offer any other support. Just as everyone was discussing the withdrawal of the Empyrean demon cult, they received a shocking piece of news. The Empyrean demon cult had sent groups of people to the surrounding divine kingdoms to engage in wanton massacres, leading to an endless slaughter once again. It filled many cities and provincial cities with blood, and no one was spared wherever they passed by. Even a few royal capitals of divine kingdoms had suffered this fate, with all the people there completely massacred by the Empyrean demon cult. The god kings who guarded the divine kingdoms were slain by several protectors from the Empyrean demon cult as well. In the end, 3 divine kingdoms that neighbored the divine kingdom of Pingtian were destroyed. The other divine kingdoms suffered losses of varying degrees as well. The god kings who stood on the walls fumed when they received the news. The divine king sighed gently. There was some helplessness on his face. He said nothing. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He analyzed to himself, in terms of time, the Empyrean demon cult moved exactly when Fairy Hao Yu infiltrated the headquarters. Clearly, they wanted to gather some more blood and energy of souls so that they could increase the quality of the blood and soul beads. It shouldn't be for recondensing the blood and soul beads. Afterwards, the coalition army on the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side remained on high vigilance. They did not leave the fortress at all. Half a month later, when a god king risked his life by approaching 10,000 kilometers from the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, did they receive accurate information. Only then did they truly believe the Empyrean demon cult had withdrawn. The divine king and the reinforcing god kings were all relieved when they received the reliable information. The divine king immediately clasped his fist at everyone. He said amicably but no less dignified, "Everyone, looks like the war this time has truly ended. I am grateful for all your assistance and reinforcement. You are too polite, Your Majesty. The Empyrean demon cult is vicious. Against such a horrible cult, we should unite together against them." An old man clasped his fist at the divine king and said extremely politely. He was an elder of the Earth Spirit sect. Of course, he was not one of the 3 elders who had come to the divine kingdom initially. Instead, he belonged to the second wave of reinforcements. Then, the elder looked at Jian Chen, and he said apologetically, "Brother Jian Chen, I hope you don't take offense from what those disappointing disciples of our Earth Spirit sect did to you." The old man sighed gently after reaching this point. "It's just a pity that many of our disciples have fallen on the battlefield, or our Earth Spirit sect will definitely punish them severely so that we can provide an explanation to Brother Jian Chen." All the god kings who stood on the walls looked at Jian Chen and the elder from the Earth Spirit sect. They had heard about Jian Chen's grievance with the Earth Spirit sect. If Jian Chen was a supreme overgod who could barely manage to make it onto the overgod's plaque, there would be no need for the Earth Spirit sect to worry too much even if they had to take him seriously with their strength. However, he was a supreme overgod with shocking strength, someone who could challenge the person who ranked first on the overgod's plaque. That changed the situation completely because an overgod like that could fend off god kings, and if they broke through to god king, they would be able to make it onto the god king's throne. It was rumored that those who ranked within the top 10 on the god king's throne possessed extremely shocking strength that was enough to fend off early infinite primes. As a matter of fact, they could even accomplish the shocking feat of killing regular infinite primes as god kings. Moreover, it was revealed that a primordial realm expert was supporting Jian Chen through the matters with Yaxi Lian. The Earth Spirit sect was naturally reluctant to offend someone like that. Jian Chen remained indifferent under the attention of all the god kings from different organizations. He said, "This matter isn't really related to the dead disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. The true suspect is someone else. It's impossible for a few disciples to possess something as precious as a god king level talisman." The elder's face immediately froze from that. He sighed gently and said nothing else. After bidding farewell to the Divine King, he left with the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. He knew that the grievances between the Earth Spirit sect and Jian Chen could not be resolved in just a few words. He would let the sect master and so on deal with it instead. Now that the war against the Empyrean demon cult had ended, the god kings from the various organizations all retreated. They returned to where they came from. The Divine King arrived before Jian Chen and said, "Jian Chen, let me go deal with some matters after the battle first. In 3 days, I'll personally accompany you to the Earth Spirit sect." The people from the Earth Spirit sect haven't been looking at the bigger picture, attacking people on the same side as them during the war. I will definitely demand an explanation from them for this. Towards the end, the Divine King's voice became rather solemn as a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Chapter 1964, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect, 2. Now that the war had ended, Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather returned to the provincial city with the people from the Dong'an province. Shen Jian did not stick around for long. On the same day they returned, he bid farewell to Jian Chen and everyone else before setting off all by himself to find what was calling him in the distance. As for Xiongzhong, Cheng Jingyun, and the others who came from the world of Forsaken Saints, they remained with the Tian Yuan clan. They were still too weak right now. If they went with their spirit king, not only would they fail to provide any support, but they would even weigh him down instead. After all, Shen Jian was leaving the cloud plane and entering outer space, venturing to a place beyond the cloud plane. He would face dangers everywhere. As for Jian Chen, he was conditioning himself in the Tian Yuan clan, quietly waiting for his visit to the Earth Spirit sect to come in 3 days. At the same time, the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult who served the branch on the cloud plane gathered in a gloomy secret room within the headquarters. A thick demonic aura surrounded them as they gave off tremendous, terrifying presences, causing the air in the room to seemingly solidify. What are the higher-ups trying to do? The blood and soul beads that our branch spent so much time condensing have been stolen under the protection of the formations the Great Elder personally cast down, yet the Grand Elder has given no response at all. Not only has he not sent a chaotic prime to capture the person who stole the beads, but he hasn't even given orders to search for the beads. It's as if he doesn't care about the loss at all. Hasn't all our hard work over these years gone to waste? Huayan said. His face was obscured, but his voice was filled with doubt and confusion. Huayan, there are just some things that we can't do anything about. It's best if you stop criticizing the higher-ups. If the Grand Elder hears of it, he'll be displeased, Yi Huaiwe said indifferently. Then, she looked at the 3rd vice leader and said, Elder Sun, an unknown infinite prime captured Yaxi Lian recently. Through the description from Yaxi Lian, do you think the primordial realm expert who stole the blood and soul beads from our headquarters is the same person who captured Yaxi Lian? The vice leader known as Elder Sun fell silent for a while. Only then did he say, the primordial realm expert who captured Yaxi Lian uses moonlight combined with laws, while the person who intruded on our headquarters also used that. In my opinion, she's the same person. Since it's the same person, it's much easier to handle. According to my knowledge, the primordial realm expert seems to be related to a person called Jian Chen from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Yi Huaiwe said with ulterior motives. Jian Chen. It's Jian Chen again. Huaiyan's cold voice rang out. As soon as Jian Chen was mentioned, unconcealable killing intent rose up from his heart. He said, "Not only did Jian Chen stand up against us publicly, protecting the clan of Duanmu's successor, but it was also because of him that I had to agree to half a month of ceasefire. I even suspect that the blood and soul beads were robbed this time because of Jian Chen. He cannot be left alive." Huaiyan continued, "The blood beads and soul beads were condensed after much difficulty, taking tremendous effort and time. We have to retrieve them, or we won't be able to give the Great Elder an explanation at all. Since Jian Chen is connected to all this, I'll start with him." There was cold killing intent in Huaiyan's voice. The higher-ups aren't actually looking into the loss of the blood and soul beads. There's something strange about it. There's probably something hidden that we do not know about in there. Huaiyan, I think it's best if you don't act recklessly, Elder Sun warned out of kind intentions. The loss of the blood and soul beads had filled him and Yi Huaiwe with regret as well, as every single one of those 18 tiny beads was condensed from their efforts. Every single one of the beads had cost them great efforts. Even though they knew the Great Elder needed the beads and they would not obtain a single one once they were completely condensed, it still represented their contribution and hard work. However, Yi Huaiwe and he could both tell that there was probably another side to the story, making it not as simple as it seemed on the surface. As a result, the two of them did not dare to act recklessly. Formations the Great Elder personally cast down protected the blood and soul bead. Chaotic primes could smash through the castle, but they would not be able to destroy those formations at all. Yet, the beads had all been lost while the formations remained intact. They were unsure if this was the purposeful arrangements of the higher-ups, or in other words, there was a scheme they did not know hidden in there. The light in Huaiyan's eyes flickered. After a while of thought, he nodded slowly, "I understand the weight of this matter." The Blood Sun Empire was located in the center of the southern region. It was the only eternal empire in the southern region, and 6 ancient empires surrounded it as well as countless divine kingdoms of various sizes. In the depths of a well-decorated hall within the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire, the heavy door to a secret room slowly opened with a heavy squeaks. A dignified middle-aged man in gold and violet robes stood there with his arms crossed before the secret room. When the door to the room was completely opened, the middle-aged man entered at a steady pace. "Greetings, Ninth Prince." 3 middle-aged men were already standing politely within the secret room. They had been waiting for some time now. They all bowed at the middle-aged man who entered the secret room. The middle-aged man who had just entered the secret room was the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Even though there were over a dozen princes in the Blood Sun Empire, there was only a handful of them who truly stood out and had the right to succeed as emperor. Not only was the 9th prince the one who stood out the most among them, but he was also the person that the current emperor valued the most. There were even rumors that once the emperor of the Blood Sun Empire abdicated, the next emperor would definitely be the 9th prince. As a result, basically no other prince could match up to the 9th prince's authority in the Blood Sun Empire. The 9th prince stood before the 3 of them indifferently and ordered firmly, "The 3 of you visit the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair near the Heavenly Moon Empire. Bring me the flower of ways I planted there." After so many years of preparation, the 9th prince had finally reached the peak of God King. He was only a single step away from the primordial realm. This step seemed short, but in reality, it was extremely distant and extremely difficult to take. Even with the 9th prince's surprising talent, he would still need a very long time to reach the primordial realm. The Flower of Ways was the only heavenly resource that could allow him to overcome his current cultivation bottleneck in the shortest amount of time possible so that he could reach the primordial realm. The faces of the 3 god kings changed when the prince mentioned the Flower of Ways. They looked at one another, and their faces were filled with bitterness. The 9th prince frowned. He asked grimly, "Something has happened to the Flower of Ways?" The 3 middle-aged god kings hesitated slightly. Finally, one of them gathered the courage to say, "Ninth Prince, the Flower of Ways has been taken by a primordial realm expert." The ninth prince's eyes immediately emitted two shocking beams of light when he heard that. A tremendous presence radiated from his body like a flood. It was extremely terrifying. They were also god kings, but when the three middle-aged men faced the presence that had erupted from the ninth prince, they staggered backwards. They felt like a mountain had crushed down on them. "Let's go to the mountains of Seven's despair," the ninth prince said emotionlessly. The Earth Spirit sect was one of the two peak sects in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They possessed an extremely great status in the Heavenly Moon Empire, where even the imperial family had to show them respect. The Earth Spirit sect was established in the 3,000 spiritual mountains that possessed the densest origin energy in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They used the mountains as a source of energy to cast down a tremendous protective formation. The formation was so powerful that even regular primordial realm experts would struggle to shake it. This day just happened to be the centennial disciple acceptance ceremony of the Earth Spirit sect. The narrow path between the mountains that led to the sect was already completely packed. Many young people of similar ages stood in groups neatly, taking the various tests set up by the Earth Spirit sect in an orderly manner. They wanted to join the Earth Spirit sect and become one of their disciples so that they could bring glory to their family and ancestors. There were many people from large clans who possessed some status in the Heavenly Moon Empire among them. They either rode powerful, tamed birds or beasts or luxurious carriages. As a result, the area outside the sect had already become filled with luxurious carriages as well as huge, powerful beasts. However, without any exceptions, no one dared to fly in the sky within 1,000 kilometers of the sect. They all traveled along the ground. At this moment, a golden streak of light suddenly appeared. It directly crossed through the sky at a high altitude, moving towards the Earth Spirit sect. They were still at the horizon, but in the next moment, they had crossed the distance and appeared outside the Earth Spirit sect. It did not land. Instead, it hovered in the sky at the same level as the highest mountain of the Earth Spirit sect. At a closer glance, the golden carriage was pulled by 9 exotic beasts. Each beast was very powerful, possessing the cultivation level of over-god. Who is the one in the carriage? He's behaving in such an imposing manner, still floating in the sky after arriving before the Earth Spirit sect. That altitude is the same as the highest peak of the Earth Spirit sect. What a bold person. Doesn't he know that these actions are no different to challenging the Earth Spirit sect? The only people bold enough to do something like this either don't know the rules of the Earth Spirit sect or are extremely impressive experts. However, even the Emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire and elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds would not dare to fly that high. That's the same height as the mountain occupied by the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. For a moment, everyone outside the sect stared at the golden carriage as they discussed among themselves. The elder who was responsible for the acceptance ceremony did not go up to stop the carriage when he saw it. Instead, his eyes narrowed, and he immediately grew stern. He had already recognized the carriage. The owner of the carriage did indeed possess the right to act that way now. At this moment, the formation around the Earth Spirit sect shook. It completely opened. This would only happen when the Earth Spirit sect had to receive people with great statuses. So it's the Pingtian Divine King. Our humble abode is honored to have the Divine King. Please come in, a peal of laughter rang out. The current sect master flew out with over a dozen elders from the sect. They were all enthusiastic. If it were before the Divine King had reached the primordial realm, the Earth Spirit sect would have never welcomed him with such a great crowd of people. However, ever since he had broken through, his status had changed greatly. There were no organizations within an ancient empire that would want to offend an expert like that for no good reason. Chapter 1965, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect, 3, What? the person in the carriage is actually the divine king of the divine kingdom of Pingtian? It's said that he has reached the primordial realm now and is currently an infinite prime. He's on the same level as the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, so it's the divine king of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. That's what I was saying. Just who else would be bold enough to not only fly in the territory of the Earth Spirit sect but also maintain an altitude equal to the highest peak? Oh my god, is there really a primordial realm expert inside that golden carriage in the sky? That's a figure of legends. Many people don't get to see a single one in their entire lives. Naturally, the countless young people who had come to join the Earth Spirit sect and the seniors who accompanied them heard the sect master's voice loud and clear. It immediately led to a noisy clamor. In the next moment, the countless gazes that laid on the golden carriage shone. They were filled with excitement, envy, respect, and admiration. The primordial realm was a legendary level of cultivation to many of them. With their status, they did not even possess the right to see an expert like that. The Divine King's carriage made its way through the entrance of the Earth Spirit sect slowly under the warm welcome personally led by the sect master with the elders. They disappeared from view. In the center of the mountain range was a huge peak. Someone with great strength had forcefully cleaved it into an open square. The Divine King's golden carriage slowly came to a stop there. As the carriage opened, the white-robed Jian Chen and the dragon-robed Divine King emerged. The sect master was a scholarly, middle-aged man. Currently, he smiled from ear to ear, and just when he wanted to talk, the horizon became extraordinarily bright. It was as if a huge sun hung at the entrance of the sect, causing it to become 2 or 3 times brighter compared to elsewhere. Jian Chen sensed something. He looked over and saw a ruddy old man shining brilliantly like a sun, making his way over through the air from afar. The light he gave off was so bright that it directly suppressed the sun's light, making it pale in comparison. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed the moment he saw the old man. The old man was only shining and gave off no presence, so he seemed ordinary. However, Jian Chen was able to tell with a single glance that the old man had surpassed God King and reached the primordial realm. The sect master and the many elders sensed the old man's arrival. Respect immediately filled all their faces, and they bowed at the old man. Greetings, ancestor. The ancestor moved extremely quickly. In just a single step, he traversed the distance and appeared before Jian Chen and the Divine King. He glanced past Jian Chen indifferently before directly looking at the Divine King. However, his indifferent glance made Jian Chen's heart beat heavily. At that moment, he felt like he was suffocating, and he had even lost control of his body for a split second. The primordial realm is indeed powerful. I really am like an ant before an expert like this, thought Jian Chen. He had seen quite a few primordial realm experts before. Aside from the Divine King and Huaiyan, he had seen many infinite primes in his trip to the northern region. He had even seen a chaotic prime that possessed even more terrifying strength. However, those primordial realm experts never released their presences purposefully, so Jian Chen did not experience anything particularly memorable. However, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect had shown off the might of the primordial realm at first glance. Even though it was just a split second, Jian Chen had truly felt how powerful the primordial realm was. Pingtian, congratulations on reaching this cultivation level. I believe that before long, a 7th ancient empire will appear in our southern region. The ancestor clasped his fist at the Divine King before inviting him into the main hall. Everyone sat down within the main hall. The ancestor and the Divine King sat at similar levels. Sang 2, let's cut to the chase. You should know why I've come here today. The Divine King directly approached the main reason behind his visit as soon as he sat down. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect remained silent. Your Majesty, what happened on the battlefield was indeed our disciples' fault. Our Earth Spirit sect is willing to compensate Brother Jian Chen for the injuries he suffered on the battlefield. Moreover, the protector who dealt the sneak attack to Brother Jian Chen with the talisman has already been expelled from our Earth Spirit sect. From today onwards, she is no longer our disciple. May I ask if Brother Jian Chen and your Majesty is satisfied with this? The sect master said. The Divine King looked at Jian Chen, clearly asking for his thoughts. Jian Chen's lips curled into a cold smile. He said, "How can something as precious as a God King level talisman end up in the hands of an over-god, especially an over-god who's not particularly powerful? As a result, the true suspect behind all this is not the protector. Instead, she was ordered to do so by your elders." The sect master became stern. He asked solemnly, "Brother Jian Chen, may I ask if you have any evidence that points to the elders of our Earth Spirit sect as the suspect? If you're drawing a conclusion from a single God King level talisman all by yourself, isn't that a little too rash?" Rash? I don't feel that it's rash at all. Instead, I think Jian Chen's words are reasonable, the Divine King said firmly. The sect master's face became unsettled. Once this matter involved people at the level of elders, it would be rather difficult to resolve. Their Earth Spirit sect could give up on a few over-god protectors, but God Kings were the pillars of support of the Earth Spirit sect. Losing even just one of them would affect the strength of the Earth Spirit sect. The elders seated in the hall all became stern. "Bring me Mu Ku," the ancestor said all of a sudden, but his face remained indifferent. Mu Ku was an elder of the Earth Spirit sect as well as the master of the 7 protectors who had created a mess in the Dong'an province. The sect master's face immediately changed. After hesitating slightly, he still sent people to summon Elder Mu in the end. Very soon, Elder Mu entered the hall. He bowed at the ancestor and stood there with a sunken face. "Jian Chen, the suspect you speak of, who is the master of those protectors, is right here. Do you plan on doing it yourself, or do you want Ping Tian to do it for you?" The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said indifferently. "Ancestor, we still haven't completely investigated," the sect master said with some urgency. He was a God King elder, so he could not be handed over just like that. However, before he could finish speaking, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect had raised his hand to shut him up. He stared at Jian Chen deeply. "If that's the case, I'll take him back with me," said the Divine King. He handled the matter decisively and was about to take Mu Ku. "If that's the case, I'll take him back with me," said the Divine King. He handled the matter decisively and was about to take Mu Ku. However, just when the Divine King was about to make his move, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said suddenly, "Ping Tian, don't you feel like you're lowering yourself too much by moving against a God King as a primordial realm expert?" The Divine King frowned at that. He said indifferently, "Sang Tu, what are you trying to say? Do you want Jian Chen to fight a God King as an over-god? It's rumored that although Jian Chen has not attempted the over-god's plaque, he already possesses the strength to challenge the person who ranks first. Moreover, he defeated a God King lately. As a result, having Jian Chen fight Mu Ku is relatively fair," the ancestor said indifferently. He looked at the Divine King and continued, "Although Mu Ku is a God King, he's only an early God King and not a supreme God King either. As a result, if you take action, Ping Tian, you'll be lowering yourself." Mu Ku. The ancestor looked at Mu Ku. His face was dignified to the point where he could not be denied. "Ancestor." Elder Mu bowed politely. "Mu Ku, on the battlefield between the divine kingdom of Ping Tian and the Empyrean demon cult, your disciple ignored the bigger picture and attacked a person on her side despite the circumstances. As their master, you haven't managed to restrain them properly, so you are responsible for your disciple's mistakes. You need to give Jian Chen an explanation for this," the ancestor said. "Yes, ancestor." Mu Ku said politely. He did not dare to disobey. "Jian Chen, what I can offer you is a battle against Mu Ku, regardless of any deaths that may happen. What do you think? The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said to Jian Chen. Jian Chen stood up. He looked at the ancestor with great interest. Not only did he show no fear, but his expression was also rather sharp. He said coldly, "If that's the case, allow me to witness just how powerful the God King elders of your Earth Spirit sect are." Jian Chen glared at Elder Mu as powerful sword intent radiated from him. He said coldly, "Mu Ku, come fight me." There was also a certain sharpness in Elder Mu's old eyes. He said, "I also want to witness the supreme prodigy who can challenge the first place on the Overgod's plaque. I want to see whether you really are as powerful as you are rumored to be, or you can defeat God Kings as an Overgod." With that, Elder Mu made his way outside. "Mu Ku, only defeat is accepted in this battle." However, the ancestor's voice rang out in Mu Ku's head at this moment. The secret message had come from an expert who had reached Infinite Prime many years ago, so even the Divine King was unable to hear it, let alone the other elders present. As a result, only Mu Ku heard the message. Elder Mu immediately froze. His face rapidly changed a few times before returning to how it was before. He felt grief. There were many platforms of different sizes in the Earth Spirit sect. They were specially provided for spars between disciples. Currently, Jian Chen and Elder Mu stood before each other on the largest one. A barrier the ancestor cast down had surrounded the entire platform. The barrier was so powerful that even God Kings would struggle to get through it. It would easily resist the shockwaves of battle that appeared inside. Basically, all the elders of the Earth Spirit sect had gathered around the platform. Even the elders in seclusion had emerged to witness the fight. If it were just a battle between God Kings, it would be impossible for so many elders to watch. However, a battle between a supreme Overgod who was powerful enough to challenge the first place on the Overgod's plaque and a God King was attractive enough for all these God Kings to come to watch. Even primordial realm experts would pay some attention to it. Mu Ku stood on the platform with an extremely sunken face. The ancestor's message continued to resound through his head. That message had basically severed any chance for him to survive, filling him with despair. I really never thought that when I suggested to my disciples to move against Jian Chen, not only would they fail to kill him successfully, but I'd even end up doomed instead, abandoned mercilessly by the sect. Didn't the humiliation of the disciples fall onto our Earth Spirit sect's pride? My actions were to recover our pride so that other people would not make use of our name to propel themselves. But in the end, I ruined myself instead. Elder Mu sighed emotionally inside. At that moment, he was filled with indescribable bitterness. However, his gaze became extremely cold soon afterwards. The powerful pressure that belonged to a God King radiated from him. Laws formed chains as they wrapped around him. He stared at Jian Chen in great interest as he thought, as a God King, even if I can't win, I can't let Jian Chen have it easy in this battle. I will use my full strength. Elder Mu moved. He wielded a wooden staff as he charged at Jian Chen with soaring battle intent. The terrifying power of his cultivation poured out from his body, and all of it condensed in the wooden staff at that moment. He extended it towards Jian Chen with the God King level laws in an overwhelming manner. Elder Mu did not hold back at all. He used his full strength, so the strike was extraordinarily powerful. When he extended his staff, the terrifying energy it contained actually affected the space within the barrier, making it twist. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect and the Divine King both furrowed their brows outside. Naturally, the two of them could tell that Mu Ku was using his full strength. They did not know if Jian Chen would actually be able to deal with such a powerful opponent. Although there were rumors that Jian Chen had defeated a God King in the northern region, it was still a rumor in the end. There were details they did not know, such as whether the rumor had been exaggerated or whether the God King was injured. Being able to challenge first place on the Overgod's plaque was only a descriptor of Jian Chen's strength. After all, he did not attempt the Overgod's plaque, so just how high he could rank on the Overgod's plaque and whether he really possessed the power to rival first place were unanswered questions. Does Mu Ku plan on disobeying me? The ancestor's heart sank slightly. Cold light flickered in his deep, dark eyes. Jian Chen's face did not change at all when he faced Elder Mu's aggressive strike on the platform. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as he protected himself with a layer of light, stabbing out with composure. The strike was simple and ordinary, without any fancy tricks to it at all. However, it was exactly this strike that possessed the deep mysteries of the sword. It conformed to the laws of the sword, and coupled with the devastatingly powerful chaotic force, its might had completely surpassed the level of overgods, barely making it to the level of god-kings. Even though it had only barely made it to the level of god-kings, it was enough to rival early god-kings due to the various advantages of the chaotic body. At the moment Jian Chen and Mu Ku struck out, the elders around the platform all squinted their eyes. Not only did they pay close attention to the battle, but all of them had even expanded the senses of their souls as well, enveloping the entire platform. They wanted to see the battle between the two clearly. They were unwilling to miss out on any detail. At the moment Jian Chen and Mu Ku struck out, the elders around the platform all squinted their eyes. Not only did they pay close attention to the battle, but all of them had even expanded the senses of their souls as well, enveloping the entire platform. They wanted to see the battle between the two clearly. They were unwilling to miss out on any detail. This was because this was an outstanding battle where an overgod challenged a god-king. Even with the entire Saints world in perspective, a battle like this was extremely rare. After all, the people who were able to challenge god-kings as overgods were basically all supreme prodigies who ranked within the top 10 of the overgods plaque. Even the Divine King and the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stared at the platform without blinking. They wanted to see if Jian Chen possessed the strength he had in the rumors, where he defeated a god-king in the northern region as an overgod. Boom! Under the close watch of everyone, Jian Chen and Elder Mu's first attacks finally clashed. A violent boom immediately erupted on the platform. Powerful energy wreaked havoc on the platform as a visible current. Jian Chen and Mu Ku protected themselves with laws. The light around them flickered as they remained still. Not only had Jian Chen received Mu Ku's full-powered strike perfectly, but it also seemed like he had managed to match Mu Ku. Mu Ku's eyes immediately narrowed after the strike. His gaze towards Jian Chen had finally become stern. He had truly witnessed Jian Chen's strength after the clash. He knew that Jian Chen did not enjoy undeserved fame. He truly possessed the battle prowess to face off against a god-king. Jian Chen's face was emotionless as his eyes shone with cold light, making his gaze as sharp as swords. He used the startling rainbow sword to block Mu Ku's wooden staff as he formed a seal with his other hand. Immediately, a golden strand of sword chi condensed above his head, radiating with powerful sword intent. The sword intent was so powerful that it caused Elder Mu's face to change slightly. He could clearly sense that the golden sword chi above Jian Chen's head was so powerful that it was enough to threaten him. Elder Mu responded extremely quickly. Just when Jian Chen's sword chi had condensed, he bellowed out, and he suddenly shot backwards. At the same time, the wooden staff in his hand danced. The power of laws wove together, rapidly condensing into a huge piece of wood. The appearance of the piece of wood was accompanied with the might of the world. The energy it contained was so powerful that it was enough to make the expression of any early god-king in the Earth Spirit sect change. Jian Chen's Daluo sword had directly forced Mu Ku to use his battle skill. Mu Ku is actually using a battle skill. It looks like Jian Chen really does have some ability. He can actually force a god-king into using a battle skill as an overgod. No wonder he's known as someone who can challenge the first place on the overgod's plaque. He is indeed very powerful. Jian Chen's reputation is deserved, so what if he deserves the reputation he possesses? Although prodigies who rank towards the top of the over-gods plaque can kill god-kings, those are only ordinary god-kings. Mu Ku is no ordinary god-king. He has comprehended the various cultivation methods and battle skills of our Earth Spirit sect. Although his strength isn't enough for him to rank amongst the top of early god-kings, he's still extraordinary, that's right. If Mu Ku did not use a battle skill, Jian Chen would indeed have the power to reach a stalemate against Mu Ku. However, since Mu Ku is using a battle skill, Jian Chen's defeat is certain. The many observing elders of the Earth Spirit sect sighed in amazement. This really was the first time they had seen such a powerful over-god, where he could hold his ground against a god-king and even force him into using a battle skill. After all, they had only heard legends of over-gods fighting god-kings. And these legends were mostly exaggerated. However, the gaze of the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect could not help but become slightly sunken when he saw how Mu Ku not only disobeyed his orders, but he had even become bolder as the battle went on. Go! At this moment, Mu Ku called out. As he extended his finger, the huge piece of wood shot off as a streak of green light towards Jian Chen with unbelievable speed. Boom! The huge piece of wood collided with the golden sword Qi, erupting with a deafening sound. The entire platform shook heavily from their strike while even the ground had cracked. However, Jian Chen's attacks were as intense as a storm. Before the effects of the previous attack had completely settled down, another attack would come. When the sword Qi collided with the huge piece of wood, he became covered with light. Afterwards, he turned into a bolt of lightning and suddenly shot off with unbelievable speed. How is Jian Chen so powerful? He even stopped my battle skill, and he's only an over-god. Mu Ku was amazed by Jian Chen's strength. He knew that the ancestor had ordered him to throw the battle, but he did not want to lose in such a miserable way. Originally, he believed he could rely on his cultivation as a god-king to heavily injure Jian Chen in an overwhelming manner before forfeiting before everyone, so Jian Chen had defeated him. He wanted to show everyone just how helpless and without a choice he was to choose defeat. He did not want to truly lose to Jian Chen in battle. However, he had never thought that Jian Chen's strength would completely exceed his expectations. He was already using his full strength, and he had even used a battle skill, yet Jian Chen still managed to match him evenly, preventing him from gaining the upper hand at all. However, just when Mu Ku was amazed, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Up ahead, a streak of light suddenly shot over at an unbelievable speed, punching through Elder Mu's body instantly. It was fast, simply too fast. The streak of light was so fast that even Mu Ku was unable to catch a glimpse of it. He only managed to find it with the senses of his soul, but it was impossible for him to react due to how close and fast the streak of light was. Mu Ku stood there frozen. He lowered his head and stared at the bowl-sized hole in his chest. He refused to accept this outcome. How, what secret technique did Jian Chen use earlier to move so quickly? The elders observing the battle were all shocked as well. They had never expected something like this. It's Mu Ku's defeat. The ancestor stood up and declared the outcome of the battle. At the same time, he finally let out a breath of relief inside. Jian Chen, according to our earlier agreement, Mu Ku's life belongs to you, the ancestor said to Jian Chen as he removed the barrier around the platform. Jian Chen, are you fine? The Divine King appeared before Jian Chen silently and asked in concern. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I'm fine, said Jian Chen. Then, he looked at Mu Ku. A cold light flickered through his eyes. Mu Ku turned around in dejection and looked at Jian Chen gloomily. He said, Jian Chen, do it. As he said that, he closed his eyes. All his hopes vanished at that moment. Brother Jian Chen, please show mercy. We will be eternally grateful if you spare Mu Ku's life. Brother Jian Chen, please stay your hand. We are willing to make it up to you in different ways as long as you spare Muku's life. All the elders pleaded for mercy. Even the sect master looked at the ancestor, hoping he would step forward to save Muku. God Kings were the pillars of support of the Earth Spirit sect. They were extremely important. The ancestor remained emotionless and said nothing. Jian Chen stared at Muku. The light in his eyes flickered, and after a while of thought, he said slowly, Muku, I'll give you two choices. The first is that I can kill you right now and disperse your soul, reducing your arduous cultivation of countless years to nothing. The second is that you will immediately swear to protect my Tian Yuan clan for 10,000 years. You will recover your freedom after those 10 millennia. Jian Chen's surprising suggestion stunned everyone present. Even the Divine King was extremely surprised. Jian Chen's surprising suggestion stunned everyone present. Even the Divine King was extremely surprised. However, all the elder who pleaded for Muku became delighted soon afterwards. To them, protecting the Tian Yuan clan for 10,000 years was nothing compared to Muku's life. Every single God King had lived for a very long time. Who knew how many millennia they had lived for? As a result, 10 millennia was just too short in their eyes. The sect master finally let out a sigh of relief inside as well. Even though he felt like it was an extremely disgraceful and humiliating matter for a God King to guard an over-God's clan for 10,000 years, the disgrace and humiliation was nothing compared to Muku's life. Moreover, this over-God was no ordinary over-God. Rather, it was one that possessed extraordinary strength and could truly challenge the person ranked first on the over-God's plaque. Once an over-God like that became a God King, they would definitely be able to make it onto the God King's throne. They might even be able to challenge primordial realm experts as God Kings. Guarding the clan of a supreme over-God like this for 10,000 years was not necessarily embarrassing. Elder Mu, stop hesitating. Agree to it. Many of the God Kings, including the sect master, urged Muku secretly. On the platform, Muku stood there with a pale face. He was gloomy as he stared at Jian Chen in a gloomy daze. Naturally, he had heard the many messages from his fellow elders, but getting him, a mighty God King, to guard someone else's clan for 10,000 years was something extremely difficult to accept. Elder Mu stood on the platform in thought for a very long time. He was in a serious dilemma. In the end, he slowly turned his head and looked at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood in the distance calmly. He showed no particular emotion at all. In the end, Elder Mu looked at Jian Chen again. With mixed feelings, he looked at this person who was only an over-God, yet possessed battle prowess so great that even he could not rival. He sighed helplessly inside before saying with some sorrow, I'll guard your clan for 10,000 years. This short sentence had taken a lot of energy for Muku to say. He seemed to have withered after saying that as if he had lost his soul. He was completely dejected. Since the grievance has been resolved, it's time for us to go. Sang 2, we can catch up some other time, the Divine King said to the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect clasped his fist at the Divine King. After a simple conversation, he bid farewell to the Divine King. Afterwards, the Divine King and Jian Chen climbed back onto the carriage and shot off under the gazes of the many elders and disciples. Elder Mu did not leave with them. He would be settling down in the Tian Yuan clan after he departed, and he would guard the clan for 10,000 years. As a result, there were matters he had to take care of before he left. Muku, come and see me, the ancestor said to Muku before drifting off. On the highest peak within the mountain ranges of the Earth Spirit sect, origin energy had formed a mist that curled around the mountain top, obscuring it, making it seem like it reached into the clouds. This mountain peak was the symbol of the essence of the Earth Spirit sect as well as the very backbone that supported the prosperous sect. It was where the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect cultivated. At this moment, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood by a cliff on the top of the mountain. He gazed into the distance deeply as the wind there whistled, buffeting his long, silver hair and clothes. Behind him stood the current sect master and a dispirited Muku. Muku, do you know what I wanted you to be defeated? The ancestor said calmly with his back towards Muku. However, the calm voice was filled with some helplessness. I did not know originally, but I understood afterwards. It's because the primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen is very powerful, said Muku. Ancestor, do you know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen? The sect master asked. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect let out a long sigh. I don't know who the primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen is, but she's not someone our Earth Spirit sect can afford to offend. She's so powerful that she only needs a simple gesture to destroy our Earth Spirit sect. As he said that, the ancestor could not help but think about what had happened 3 days ago. Back then, when he was cultivating in his secret room, a beautiful woman in white clothes had appeared before him silently. If it were not for the fact that the woman had purposefully let out her presence and alarmed him, he probably would not have known that an outsider had intruded on the secret room he had covered with formations even if he died. Although the woman did not touch him, the presence she gave off was so powerful that the ancestor was still able to recall it like it was new. He would never forget that presence. Before it, he could not even resist as if he stood before a chaotic prime. He felt as insignificant as an ant. He did not doubt at all that the woman possessed the terrifying strength to obliterate the Earth Spirit sect with a simple gesture. His Earth Spirit sect could never afford to offend such a powerful expert. Both Elder Mu and the current sect master were shocked and they heard the ancestor's words. They had all heard that there was a primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen, but they never thought that she possessed strength that was so terrifying that even their ancestor would be so frightened. Do you understand now? A sliver of bitterness appeared on the ancestor's face. He said helplessly, we can't offend the person behind Jian Chen, but we still have to keep our pride. If we directly give in, it'll damage our name if news of the matter makes it out. This was why I wanted you to lose to Jian Chen in the battle before everyone. That way, not only would Jian Chen get the explanation he deserves, but the expert behind him would also not be offended, and we would be able to keep our pride. Although it's not a very glorious matter for a god king to lose to an overgod, Jian Chen has already defeated a god king in the northern region. He already possesses the strength to challenge first place on the overgod's plaque. Losing to a supreme overgod like that is nothing disgraceful. Muku, go tidy your things. Once you're ready, set off and protect the Tian Yuan clan for 10,000 years. Yes, ancestor, Muku said politely. Warmth filled his heart. Now, he finally understood why the ancestor had told him that only defeat was accepted in his battle against Jian Chen. As it turned out, an expert who could easily destroy the entire Earth Spirit sect backed up Jian Chen. No wonder the ancestor had made a decision like that. After the sect master and Muku departed, the ancestor stood on the edge of the cliff in thought for a while. Afterwards, a fragment of jade immediately appeared in his hand with a single movement. He used the power of his soul to engrave information onto the jade fragment. A while later, he suddenly looked into the distance and waved his hand, tossing out the jade fragment. Immediately, the jade fragment turned into a streak of white light, shooting off with unbelievable speed. It instantly disappeared. Several middle-aged men appeared silently within the miasma-shrouded depths of the Een Mountains of Seven's despair. They hovered in the air as they stared down with sunken faces. The mountains below them had already collapsed. There was rubble everywhere, and it was a mess. In the loose rubble, there were several huge figures that could be clearly seen laying on the ground. Even though they were already dead, quite a powerful pressure still leaked out from their bodies. Every single one of them was a late god king before they died. Who did this? Who has stolen my flower of ways? A middle-aged man in violet and golden robes at the very front currently stared downwards coldly as he said through gritted teeth. This middle-aged man was the 9th Prince of the Blood Sun Empire. 9th Prince, I've already sent people to investigate, but this relates to a primordial realm expert after all. It'll take some time to find out some things. However, I believe some leads will be found very soon, a God King said carefully from behind the 9th Prince. Speed up the investigation. I want to learn about this primordia realm expert in the shortest amount of time possible. So what if you're a primordial realm expert? You've taken my flower of ways. The 9th Prince's gaze was cold. He had already reached peak God King and was only a step away from the primordial realm. Originally, he would have been able to take this step easily with the flower of ways, and he would not have to waste so much time for it. However, now that the flower of ways had been taken away, it would take him much longer to reach the primordial realm. At this moment, a white piece of jade shot through the air, directly arriving before the 9th Prince. The 9th Prince stared at the piece of jade calmly and slowly grabbed it. He said, "This probably came from a primordial realm expert. It seems like it's from the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Looking at its direction, it should be from the one in the Earth Spirit sect. 9th Prince, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect has sent us a jade slip. Does he know something?" One of the people behind the 9th Prince asked. "Let's hope so," the 9th Prince said coldly before extending the senses of his soul into the jade slip. Very soon, he looked through all of its contents, and a gleam of cold light flickered through his eyes. He crushed the jade slip and said emotionlessly, "Let's go to the Dong'an province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian." Jian Chen directly returned to the Tian Yuan clan. As soon as he returned, he could clearly sense that the atmosphere of the clan seemed to have become. It was especially energetic, filled with great joy. "Patriarch, you've finally returned. Shiyu has broken through and become an over-god." Mo Ling saw Jian Chen in the distance and immediately ran over in high spirits. The Tian Yuan clan gaining another over-god was definitely something worthy of celebration. This was because in the current divine kingdom of Pingtian, over-gods were supreme rulers of provinces. Shiyu. As soon as Shiyu was mentioned, Jian Chen could not help but think back to the embroidered box he had given to Princess Tian during the time he had spent in the northern region. It has already been so long, yet there's still no news. I wonder whether my guess is wrong or the princess still hasn't given the box to the Shi Emperor or the Empress, Jian Chen thought. Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an over-god. In the future, you will also be a famed expert of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian Chen congratulated Shiyu sincerely with a happy smile when he saw her. Shiyu, congratulations on successfully becoming an over-god. In the future, you will also be a famed expert of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jian Chen congratulated Shiyu sincerely with a happy smile when he saw her. There was not a lot of over-gods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Coupled with the fact that a few had died during the battle against the Empyrean demon cult, there were even fewer over-gods now. Now that Shiyu had successfully become an over-god in these circumstances, her status would be extremely great in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shiyu wore a luxurious white dress, while her black, glossy hair had been specially styled into a bun at the back of her head. As a result, she completely lacked the heroic spirit from before. Instead, she seemed more like the treasured daughter of a large clan. I could only become an over-god so quickly because of the patriarch's nurturing. Shiyu bowed slightly. She spoke softly, where her voice was extremely pleasant. The light in her eyes shone as she looked straight at Jian Chen. Shiyu's talent was indeed very great. With the talent she had displayed right now, there was completely no need for her to take as long as she did to become an over-god. She could have accomplished it sooner. However, unfortunately, the Mo clan was just too weak. They were only a clan with a god, so they did not have that many resources to raise a prodigy like Xiyu. As a result, Xiyu only became a deity after 2,000 years of cultivation in the Mo clan. Only after meeting Jian Chen did she receive full support in nurturing, gaining both large amounts of divine crystals and guidance in comprehending the laws of the sword. Her strength had skyrocketed after that, so she went from the deity before to an over-god now in such a short amount of time. Shiyu's talent is no less than the prodigies of large clans. Jian Chen could not help but be amazed as well. He had met quite a few prodigies from those ancient empires in the past few days, so he possessed some understanding towards them. Now that he compared Xiyu to those so-called prodigies, he found that Xiyu was actually far more impressive than them. Jian Chen looked at Xiyu with some mixed feelings. He said, "Xiyu, staying at the Tian Yuan clan is basically wasting away your talent. The current Tian Yuan clan can no longer provide for you such that you can grow faster. Staying here will only waste your potential. Only those peak sects in eternal empires can allow you to climb higher and further. Are you chasing me away?" Xiyu looked at Jian Chen as her face became slightly gloomy and depressed. Jian Chen shook his head and sighed gently, "I don't intend to chase you away. I'm just thinking for you. I hope you are able to go as far as you can on the path of cultivation, or even reach the apex of the saints' world." The patriarch of the Mo clan from before, Mo Xiaofan, looked at Xiyu and sighed inside. He said, "The patriarch is right. Consider the patriarch's suggestion to join those larger sections." Mo Xiaofan had basically watched Xiyu grow up. There was no other person who understood Xiyu better than him. He felt very helpless about this. He truly wished from the bottom of his heart that Xiyu could leave the Tian Yuan clan temporarily and join those powerful sections. It would be better for her like that. "No, don't let Sister Xiyu go. Sister Xiyu, don't leave me, okay? I really don't want to separate from you." At this moment, Mo Yen also ran over. She clung onto Shiyu's arm tightly as she spoke with much unwillingness to part with her. Afterwards, she waved her little fist at Jian Chen angrily and said fiercely, "Patriarch Jian Chen, you can't let Sister Xiyu go, or I'll never forgive you." Jian Chen smiled and looked at Mo Yen rather helplessly. Although Mo Yen was older than him, he had begun to treat her as his little sister long ago. He wanted to protect Mo Yen from the bottom of his heart. However, once Jian Chen thought about Mo Yan's cultivation, he felt pained. This girl disliked cultivation very much, and she would put up an attitude as soon as it was mentioned. As a result, she basically made no progress across the years, remaining at sainthood. "Thank you for your concern, Patriarch, but I have no interest in joining those large sections. Moreover, haven't you Patriarch not joined any large sects either, and your strength still grows rapidly? As a result, I believe that I too can become a powerful expert even if I don't join those large sects," Xiyu said firmly. Jian Chen was helpless from Shiyu's insistence. He could only sigh gently inside before turning around and leaving. Unknowingly, Jian Chen had already arrived in the forbidden grounds of the Tian Yuan clan. A powerful formation enveloped the forbidden grounds, and only a handful of people possessed the right to enter the place. Standing in the forbidden grounds, Jian Chen could not help but think of Shangguan Mu'er. Originally, Shangguan Mu'er should have been cultivating here, waiting for him to come home. However, he had never thought that his visit to the northern region would result in their separation. "Mu'er, I wonder if you've arrived at the Taoist sect of Divine Sound and if they're treating you well? You have to spend your time well there and wait for me to pick you up. Although I don't know where the Skyfire Plain is or just how distant it is from the Cloud Plain, I will definitely go there." Jian Chen clasped his fist tightly as determination filled his eyes. However, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he turned around. A slender figure stood behind him silently, looking at Jian Chen calmly. "Kaya, it's you." Jian Chen was surprised. He looked at Kaya with complete shock as his heart was in turmoil. This was because he had actually failed to sense Kaya approach him at all earlier. He did not even know when Kaya had appeared behind him and how long she had been standing there. Jian Chen immediately looked at her with his full attention, studying Kaya carefully. That immediately made him gasp as disbelief filled his face. His heart churned. "Kaya, your cultivation," Jian Chen said in shock. At that moment, he struggled to believe what he was seeing. He discovered that Kaya's strength had actually risen to late over God in such a short amount of time. Jian Chen felt like he was dreaming. Just how long ago had Kaya woken up for? When she woke up, she was only a saint emperor, yet she had already become a late over God now. Jian Chen was stunned by how quickly her strength had increased. It was so fast that it even left Jian Chen in the dust. With that speed, probably only Fairy Haoyu, who had been a primordial realm expert in her former life, could surpass Kaya. "Jian Chen, thank you for the monster core and all those divine crystals. It's exactly because of them that my cultivation has managed to grow so rapidly," Kaya said to Jian Chen. From her indifferent expression, it was as if she did not know just how great of a disturbance her speedy cultivation could have created in the saint's world. Cultivation can be increased by absorbing a large number of divine crystals. But the comprehension of the laws of the world, Jian Chen hesitated. Kaya had surprised him far too much. A sliver of confusion appeared in Kaya's eyes. She said, "I don't know why either. My comprehension of the laws of the world seems to be especially easy, where I can grasp the laws without any effort. I've already grasped 3 laws now. And it seems like I can absorb the energy of divine crystals thousands of times faster than others." As she said that, Kaya immediately used the power of laws with a thought. Immediately, 3 different types of laws condensed. Jian Chen was stunned when he saw the laws revolve around Kaya. He murmured, "The laws of destruction, the laws of fire, and the last one seems to be the laws of creation." To Jian Chen's great surprise, Kaya's 3 laws had all reached late over God. Jian Chen looked at Kaya with extremely mixed feelings. The shock that Kaya had brought was just far too great. Many of them could not be comprehended with logic. Her strength had increased so quickly that it was unbelievable. Her cultivation speed and ease of comprehending laws even made Jian Chen suspect that Kaya was the reincarnation of some supreme expert. This was because according to his understanding, only a primordial realm expert like Fairy Haoyu who retained all her memories could increase their strength so quickly. "Kaya, your cultivation has been smooth sailing. It could even be called without any effort, with no exaggeration. You haven't come across any bottlenecks at all. However, I must advise you to not cultivate too quickly, or your foundations will weaken." Jian Chen looked at Kaya and said sternly. Kaya was not Fairy Haoyu after all. Jian Chen felt slightly worried about how quickly she had been cultivating. He was worried that Kaya would suffer from extreme side effects from cultivating so quickly, which would affect her future. She might even be doomed in the end. "Yeah, I understand that as well. As a result, I don't plan on cultivating for the next period of time. Instead, I'll devote myself to consolidating my cultivation, just in case it really does lead to any side effects," Kaya agreed. After hesitating slightly, she stared at Jian Chen with brimming interest and said rather energetically, "Jian Chen, although I'm a late over God now, I only possess the strength. I haven't fought anyone before, so I don't know how powerful I actually am. Why don't we spar so that I can try my current battle prowess?" "Fair enough. The Saints' world is no different from the Tian Yuan continent. You never had much battle experience on the Tian Yuan continent. Now that you've come to the Saints' world, there's even more reason for you to gain some proper experience. At the same time, you've gained such a great amount of strength in such a short amount of time. This strength also needs to experience battle after battle. Only then will you be able to use it with familiarity. Jian Chen agreed extremely happily before leaving the Tian Yuan clan with Kaya. As Kaya was already a late over god, the shockwaves of the battle between the two of them would definitely be far more than the provincial city could endure. As a result, Jian Chen chose to spar far away from the city. He selected a remote mountain range. Jian Chen hovered above the mountains and looked at Kaya calmly. Kaya, go ahead. Jian Chen, be careful, Kaya said sternly. With that, her presence changed suddenly. At the same time, the temperature in the surroundings skyrocketed. Fire appeared around Kaya, flickering in the space and giving off terrifying heat. It dyed the surroundings red. The thick layer of clouds in the sky directly dispersed at that moment. The terrifying heat from Kaya's flames had vaporized them. Jian Chen could not help but become rather stern as he stared at the laws of fire that filled Kaya's surroundings. He thought, strange. Kaya's laws of fire seem slightly different from other people's. It's as if her laws are even purer compared to the laws of fire from other late over gods. If there were some impurities within the laws of fire from other over gods, then Kaya's laws of fire would have no impurities at all. It is extremely pure. Jian Chen felt extremely surprised once again. Kaya was simply extraordinary. At this moment, Kaya moved. The flickering flames around her turned into an endless sea of fire, flying towards Jian Chen quickly with terrifying heat. The presence she gave off was even more surprising, directly plunging into the sky and shaking up the ground. She sent out a palm strike, and the endless sea of fire moved with that. The flames all gathered together at that moment, compressing into the size of a hand. It shone with light as dazzling as the sun, preventing people from staring at it directly. A gleam of light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes. He became extremely stern. He did not use the startling rainbow sword. Instead, he also struck out with his hand like Kaya. The palm strike was accompanied by chaotic force, which gave off a presence of destruction. The laws of the sword revolved around it, so his strike possessed both black and white. Boom! The two strikes collided and produced a deep rumble. Terrifying energy shot off in all directions, and the mountains beneath them all crumbled, kicking dust into the air. In the sky, Jian Chen and Kaya stood unmoving. Their hands remained pressed together. One of them shone with black and white light as chaotic force and the laws of the sword churned. The other hand was dazzling, like the sun that had been shrunken. It was blinding and gave off a terrifying heat, turning the surroundings red as if even the air had been burnt. Jian Chen shivered. Even though he had only used 70% of his strength in this strike, Kaya had managed to match him. This surprised him. However, in the next moment, his hand moved such that only a few fingers remained extended. A beam of light 3 inches long shot out, and he directly slashed it at Kaya's hand. Even though the sword chi had shot out from Jian Chen's fingers, he was already using 80% of his strength, so the sword chi could tear through almost anything. The laws of fire that had been suppressed in Kaya's hand were directly cleaved in half by Jian Chen, causing them to split. However, the laws of fire did not disperse. Instead, they turned into 2 flaming streaks of red light as they shot towards Jian Chen with unbelievable speed. At the same time, Kaya sent out a second palm strike. It was covered with flames as it crushed towards Jian Chen with great might. Immediately, Jian Chen seemed to feel a mysterious power fill his surroundings as if he had fallen into mud. All his movements dulled. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. Kaya's strike had completely taken him by surprise. Moreover, he discovered that Kaya's usage of the laws of fire had already reached great mastery, and it was nothing like someone who had just comprehended laws. Moreover, he could clearly sense that Kaya's strikes seemed to possess some type of profound truth. Clearly, it was just a simple strike, but it resonated with the world as if each strike was a battle skill, making it extremely powerful. Everything happened in a split second. Just when the two strands of laws shot towards Jian Chen at great speed, Jian Chen extended his fingers as well, sending out two strands of sword qi to block the two attacks from Kaya. Afterwards, he brought his hands together. Chaotic force churned, and a black strand of sword qi a meter in length appeared silently. He stabbed it out with the presence of destruction. Even though the two of them were sparring to check on Kaya's strength, the two of them fought with great intensity. Booms rang out in the sky as the laws of the sword and the laws of fire mingled, colliding time and time again. The mountains below had already been reduced to a mess. The countless specks of green on the mountains had been reduced to ash, and when some sparks fell down, the tough rock was even reduced to a red liquid in just a few short seconds. Jian Chen's strength had gone up from the initial 70% to 80% now. However, when Kaya used her laws of destruction, combining them with the laws of fire, she forced Jian Chen to use 90% of his strength, even making him draw the startling rainbow sword. Kaya's battle prowess had already surpassed the limits of late over God when she used the laws of destruction. It was basically approaching God King. It was not because the laws of destruction were too powerful. In terms of the simple rankings of offensive power, the laws of destruction were equal to the laws of the sword. However, Kaya's laws of destruction were the same as her laws of fire. She was able to display extraordinary might as if she possessed unimaginable understanding and grasp over both the laws of fire and the laws of destruction. As a result, she could unleash power beyond her cultivation level. Jian Chen even suspected that his understanding and grasp over the laws of the sword were not as great as Kaya's laws of fire and destruction. This was because Kaya's usage of the two laws would seem perfect even in Jian Chen's eyes from time to time. It was extraordinary. Is Kaya born to use the laws of fire and destruction? Jian Chen even experienced such strange thoughts. However, at this moment, darkness descended. The world suddenly darkened as a huge, demonic cloud stretched over the sky, obscuring the sun and throwing the mountain range into darkness. Jian Chen, you sure are bold. You've offended our Empyrean demon cult, yet you're still not hiding properly in the royal capital so that the divine king can protect you. Instead, you come to this area of wilderness. A cold voice filled with killing intent rang out as the darkness descended. The sudden change made Jian Chen and Kaya stop their spar. When the somewhat familiar voice rang out, Jian Chen's face abruptly changed. Huayan. Jian Chen growled. He became extremely grim and pushed Kaya far away without any hesitation. He called out, "Run!" Jian Chen had never thought that as one of the three great vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan would come personally for him. This immediately made his heart sink. Huanan was a primordial realm expert. With Jian Chen's current strength, he could not even flee before someone like that. Kaya did not run away. She arrived before Jian Chen again and raised her head at the sky. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the dark clouds and see the figure hidden in there. Seeing how Kaya did not run away, Jian Chen immediately panicked. He called out, "Why did you come back? Go, leave this place as quickly as possible." Kaya shook her head as she looked at how flustered Jian Chen had become. She said seriously, "I'm not running. If we're going to run, you run first. My life was saved by you. How can I run away all by myself when you're in danger?" Kaya's calm voice was firm. Kaya shook her head as she looked at how flustered Jian Chen had become. She said seriously, "I'm not running. If we're going to run, you run first. My life was saved by you. How can I run away all by myself when you're in danger?" Kaya's calm voice was firm. How are you so stupid? This is a primordial realm expert. He's so powerful that even if we work together, we won't be able to put up a fight at all. He has come especially for me, and it has nothing to do with you. If you leave, he won't pursue you, but if you stay, you'll just lose your life for nothing, Jian Chen said in a panic. He hoped to persuade Kaya to leave. He knew just how great the difference between him and primordial realm experts was. It was basically a chasm. As a result, he had already given up on running before an expert like that. This was because he understood that even if he used the linear lightning release before someone like that, he would not be able to escape. He. Jian Chen, you're about to die, yet you're still worrying about other people. It looks like this girl is quite important to you. Whatever. Since that's the case, I'll kill you both, Huaiyan's sneer rang out like thunder. Afterwards, the clouds in the sky churned wildly and condensed into a huge palm that gave off a terrifying, devastating presence. At the same time, the other two vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult sat within a hall as black mist completely shrouded their bodies. It looks like this Huaiyan really can't resist moving against Jian Chen, an old voice rang out. The vice leader called Elder Sun had spoken, and there was some helplessness on his face. I knew this would happen. Huaiyan is a vengeful person after all. Not only has Jian Chen protected the successor of Huaiyan's enemy, Duanmu, but Huaiyan was also forced to do things against his will recently with how Yashi Lian was captured and used against him by the Divine King. In the end, he could only agree to the Divine King's ceasefire without any other choice. Jian Chen directly contributed to this, so how can Huaiyan not resent him? Moreover, the brat called Jian Chen really does possess impressive talent. If he manages to mature successfully, he'll definitely become a peak expert. As a result, Huaiyan needs to move now to kill him before he has fully grown up, or Huaiyan will be the one in trouble once Jian Chen truly becomes powerful, said Yi Huaiyue. I don't care about Jian Chen's life or death. It's just that I don't feel like the reactions from above are as simple as they seem regarding the loss of the blood and soul beads. There must be something hidden in there we don't know. I even suspect that the loss of the blood and soul beads were planned by the higher-ups. If it really was planned, I'm afraid that Huaiyan might ruin it all if he attacks Jian Chen. The consequence of that isn't something we can bear, Elder Sun said with some worry. Elder Sun, we've already warned Huaiyan. It's he who insists on doing it. If his actions really do foil the plans of the higher-ups, it'll be his burden alone to bear. It has nothing to do with us, said Yi Huaiyue. Although the three vice leaders possess different strengths, their statuses were the same, so they did not have the authority to stick their noses into each other's businesses. Now that Huaiyan had set off all by himself, the two of them had no right to interfere. That's reasonable. In short, we can't take part in this matter. Let's just wait and see, nodded Elder Senator Huaiyan hovered in the demonic clouds within the divine kingdom of Pingtian. As his palm pressed down gently, the hand condensed from the endless clouds immediately crushed down towards Jian Chen and Kaya with a terrifying pressure. A strike from a primordial realm expert was so powerful that the terrifying pressure caused all the mountains below to rumble heavily. Before the hand had reached them, the rocks were already crushed, unable to endure the pressure. Jian Chen and Kaya were immobilized as the hand fell towards them as if they had been trapped where they were. Jian Chen became extremely grim as he watched the hand slowly descend from the sky. Even though he knew he was probably doomed today, he was not just going to sit here and wait for his fate. In the next moment, two strands of finger-sized sword chi hovered above his head, radiating with sword intent. At this moment, the only thing he could use was the profound sword chi. The fusion of the twin swords was impossible. Once he revealed them before a primordial realm expert, there was just too great of a chance of exposing himself. At that time, he and Kaya would not be the only ones dead. The Tian Yuan clan would be destroyed as well. The laws of creation, destruction, and fire revolved around Kaya. Her presence rapidly rose, and vaguely, some truths of the world seemed to revolve around her. Clearly, she was the same as Jian Chen, wanting to put up a desperate stand. Swish! Swish! With the two sounds, two resplendent streaks of white light shot off into the sky. Radiating with soaring sword intent, they rushed towards the hand condensed from the black clouds in an unstoppable manner. Jian Chun struck out first, using the two strands of profound sword qi at the same time. However, once he used the two strands of sword qi, basically all the power of his soul was sapped. Waves of dizziness surged up. Afterwards, Kaya moved as well. The seal formed from her two hands changed, and the laws of creation, destruction, and fire jumped about on the tip of her finger. In the end, it condensed into a complicated and profound glyph that shot towards the sky with the presence of the world. Jian Chen's two strands of sword qi collided with the hand condensed from demonic aura. It directly penetrated the hand, creating a hole that was 10 meters wide. However, that was all. The profound sword qi was unable to penetrate through the hand completely, let alone disperse it. It only managed to create a hole before it completely dispersed. Boom! However, in the next moment, there was a deafening boom. The glyph condensed from Kaya's three different types of laws had landed as well. Kaya's usage of the laws had reached perfection, even surpassing Jian Chen's usage of the laws of the sword. As a result, her strike that contained three different types of laws naturally possessed extraordinary might. However, she was still an over-god after all. The difference from the primordial realm was still too great, so the glyph condensed from the three laws was still unable to block Huaiyan's casual strike. Kaya's glyph collapsed, while the huge hand continued onwards without slowing down at all. It engulfed Jian Chen and Kaya with devastating power. Just when Jian Chen and Kaya faced a moment of life and death, a clear thrum suddenly rang out. A huge, snow-white sword qi cut through the air, shooting over like it was teleporting. Wherever the sword qi passed by, origin energy trembled and even space ripped open, leaving behind an extremely thin, black crack. It was as if someone had drawn a line in the sky. The sword qi had directly cut through space. It must be mentioned that in the saints' world, space was extremely tough. Even battles between god-kings would only make space ripple slightly. Yet, space was like a piece of paper before this strand of sword qi. It had ripped as the sword qi swept through the air. Boom! Boom! The sword qi that possessed terrifying might directly collided with the hand condensed from demonic aura. It erupted with terrifying energy shockwaves, directly flattening the mountain range, causing the ground to crack and sink. The energy shockwave was truly terrifying. Even with Jian Chen and Kaya's strength, they struggled to endure it. The energy forced them into a constant retreat. If it were not for the fact that the energy shockwave came from a casual strike of a primordial realm expert, if it were not for the fact that the sword qi still had not dispersed after cutting through the demonic hand, blocking most of the energy for Jian Chen and Kaya, it would be difficult for the two of them to emerge unscathed before the terrifying storm. They would definitely end up injured. Swish! The whistling of wind rang out once again. After dispersing the hand, the sword qi continued to shoot into the demonic cloud with shocking might. The sword qi shimmered, shining as brightly as the sun. It illuminated the sky, dyeing all the demonic, black clouds in the sky white. Humph! A cold snort rang out from the demonic clouds. Primordial realm laws descended in the demonic clouds, forming chains that flickered through the clouds like lightning, colliding with the sword qi. This collision caused another deafening boom. Just the terrifying sound alone had caused the ground to shake violently as if the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian was experiencing a great earthquake. Not only did all the rocks in the ruined mountains turn to dust, but even large portions of the ground below collapsed, turning into dark abysses. Sword immortal. Jian Chen was surprised when he sensed the power of the sword qi. The person who had produced the sword qi had reached the third major realm of cultivation in the way of the sword, sword immortal. Jian Chen subconsciously turned around and saw a dignified middle-aged man in dragon robes stride through the sky. He was clearly extremely far away, where even Jian Chen only managed to see an extremely blurry image of him. However, in the next moment, he took a single step and traversed the great distance, directly appearing before Jian Chen. He stared at the figure hidden within the demonic clouds coldly. The middle-aged man was the Divine King. Huaiyan, you've overstepped the boundary. The Divine King's hair fluttered in the wind as he stood before Jian Chen. He solemnly stared at Huaiyan, who was hidden in the clouds, as he gave off the presence of a ruler. The laws of the sword revolved around him. The Divine King actually comprehends the laws of the sword. Jian Chen was secretly surprised. He was taken aback. The laws of the sword were one of the laws that possessed the greatest offensive power. A primordial realm expert who had comprehended the laws of the sword would definitely possess much greater prowess than primordial realm experts who comprehended other laws. Although Jian Chen had spent some time with the Divine King, he did not know what kind of laws the Divine King had comprehended. Although the Divine King had used the power of laws in the war against the Empyrean demon cult before, they were hazy, only presented in the form of pure power. He did not clearly demonstrate the type of law they were. Only now did Jian Chen learn that the Divine King was actually an expert who comprehended the laws of the sword. The cloud plane may be big, but I can go wherever I want. How can you say I've overstepped the boundary? Huaiyan's voice rang out from within the demonic clouds. Then, he slowly emerged from them. However, he was not alone. Behind him hovered three figures silently. From the presences they gave off, they had all reached God King. Ping Tian, I was expecting you to appear. However, do you really think you can keep the person that I want to deal with safe with your strength that has only recently reached the primordial realm? Huaiyan sneered. Then, he said to the three people behind him, Go, bring me Jian Chen and that girl. Yes, sir. The three God Kings behind Huaiyan answered together. With a single movement, they flew towards Jian Chen and Kaya. Leave. The Divine King growled at Jian Chen. He waved his arm, and the laws of the primordial realm descended. The resplendent sword chi formed a huge chain that swept towards the three God Kings with terrifying might. A primordial realm expert strike was absolutely frightening. Even though the three God Kings were not weak, all late God Kings, they were not supreme God Kings who had made it onto the God King's throne. As a result, they shivered when they faced the Divine King's casual strike. The presence of death pressed towards them as if the world was ending. Huaiyan appeared before the three of them as if he had teleported. He blocked the Divine King's attack with composure and said, Ping Tian, our battle last time never ended. Why don't we continue it in outer space? With that, Huaiyan directly attacked the Divine King regardless of his response. Huaiyan's strike this time was on a completely different level compared to before. Before, he had struck out leisurely, without using laws from the primordial realm. He had just condensed a hand out of demonic aura to use against Jian Chen. This was because he knew the Divine King would definitely protect Jian Chen secretly, so the strike before was only to draw him out. Huaiyan did this to prevent the Divine King from dealing a sneak attack all of a sudden. Now that the Divine King had appeared, Huaiyan was fearless. He used his full strength right from the start. The Divine King was grim. Huaiyan's attack was just too powerful. If he blocked it, the shockwaves created would result in heavy damage to the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian. With no other choice, he could only fly up towards outer space. Huaiyan looked at the Divine King, and a cold smile appeared on his face. He also flew up, pursuing the Divine King. To another side, Jian Chen and Kaya were already fleeing as quickly as they could. The three God Kings pursued them closely. As two late over gods, it was naturally impossible for them to be faster than the two late God Kings. As a result, the distance between them shrank rapidly. Jian Chen and Kaya did not flee towards the Tian Yuan clan. Instead, they traveled away from the clan, fleeing from the Divine Kingdom. With the Tian Yuan clan's current strength, it was impossible for them to stop the three God Kings from the Empyrean demon cult. Even the God King level formations would not be enough to stop three late God Kings. Even if Mu Ku was there, it would not work either. As a result, they would only bring disaster to the clan if they returned. Basically all of Jian Chen's power of the soul had been drained when he used the 2 strands of profound sword qi. He was currently ingesting the soul recovery pills he had purchased from the Xiandao Empire, so Kaya basically carried him as they fled. However, Kaya once again demonstrated something that shocked Jian Chen. She used some kind of secret technique that allowed her to fuse with the surroundings and move with unbelievable speed. The 3 God Kings actually struggled to catch up to them over a short period of time. You can't run, so just give up obediently. Behind them, one of the God Kings from the Empyrean demon cult called out. Terrifying, tremendous pressure poured from his body, and he formed a seal with his hand before suddenly extending a finger forwards. The space 10 kilometers away suddenly tremored, actually freezing up at that moment from the gesture. Jian Chen and Kaya were in the region of frozen space. Immediately, they felt a mysterious power lock down on their bodies, making it feel like they had ended up in mud. Their movements became extraordinarily slow, while their speed plummeted as well. Less than 10 kilometers separated them, so now that Jian Chen and Kaya had slowed down, the 3 God Kings caught up instantly. They struck out at the same time, where 2 targeted Jian Chen while the remaining dealt with Kaya. Immediately, tremendous, terrifying energy shook up the surroundings. Even though the 3 late God Kings were not as awe-inspiring as primordial realm experts when they unleashed their might, their strength was still shocking. Jian Chen bellowed out. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as his battle intent surged into the sky. He had already equipped the damaged armor he had taken back from the ancestor of the Mo family. The sword in his hand danced, and he produced 2 golden strands of sword qi. Even though the power of his soul still had not recovered in that short amount of time, making it impossible for him to use the profound sword qi, he was still able to put up a fight. Kaya moved on the other side as well. She was extremely grim as the power from the 3 types of laws revolved around her. As her hands danced, the 3 powers condensed into 3 swords and shot out. The God King who faced Kaya raised an eyebrow and was slightly surprised when he saw this. He murmured, These laws are slightly strange. The God King from the Empyrean demon cult had also noticed that the laws that Kaya used were slightly different. However, he did not have too much time to think about it. Their attacks collided together viciously. Spurt. Kaya puked up blood as her body was knocked away like a broken kite. The laws she used were rather different, and she had delivered a shocking attack with the 3 types of laws, but she was still just a late overgod after all. The difference between her and a late God King was too great. It was so great that even the 3 laws she could use were not enough to make up for it. At the same time, from just a single clash with the 2 God Kings, Jian Chen produced a bloody mist that contained most of his organs. He was also blown away like Kaya while the startling rainbow sword in his hand had dimmed. A slight crack had appeared on the guard of the sword as well, and it stretched across the entire sword. Late God Kings were just too powerful. Moreover, they had struck out together as well, so even with the protection of the God artifact, Jian Chen struggled to endure it, becoming extremely injured. Most importantly, only the surface of his God artifact had been repaired. As such, although it seemed to be in perfect condition, its defenses as a God artifact could not be used at all. Blood constantly spurted out of his mouth as Jian Chen flew backwards. Every single mouthful of blood contained pieces of his organs. He was able to put up a fight and win against early God Kings, but he would not be able to fight back at all against late God Kings. The difference between late and early God King was just far too great. At this moment, Kaya caught up to Jian Chen with a pale face and some residual blood at the corner of her lips. She grabbed him before gritting her teeth, fleeing into the distance without any hesitation. Ha ha ha, and you still want to run? If we really do let you two puny overgods escape, will the three of us still have the face to remain in the Hall of Protectors? The three god kings laughed aloud behind as they looked at Kaya and Jian Chen like cats toying with their food. Jian Chen coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood as he glanced at the three pursuing god kings coldly. Then, he wrapped his left arm around Kaya's waist and formed a seal with his right hand, using the linear lightning release. Kaya immediately shuddered when Jian Chen wrapped his hand around her. She looked at Jian Chen with mixed emotions. In her memory, there had yet to be a man who had held her like that aside from her father. Moreover, she felt an intense repulsion towards a man touching her so closely like that. The repulsion rose up, growing stronger and stronger as if a voice constantly reminded her to resist. It had almost shaken her will, which would lead to her directly resisting Jian Chen. However, Kaya was in no position to think. She felt her body suddenly sink, and the surroundings turned into a blur instantly. The scenery around her shot past as blurry streaks of light. Jian Chen had already used the linear lightning release. He and Kaya were surrounded by light as they turned into a bolt of lightning and shot off into the distance with unbelievable speed. They were so fast that they could not be described as covering 1,000 kilometers in a split second. Instead, it was 10,000 kilometers or even several tens of thousand kilometers. The eyes of the three pursuing god kings of the Empyrean demon cult narrowed all of a sudden. Jian Chen and Kaya were so quick that it stunned them. Their speed had basically surpassed the limits of what the naked eye could see. Their movement could only be caught with the senses of the soul. Chase them. We can't let them escape. One of the god kings bellowed out and immediately used a secret technique with the other two god kings. Their speeds also skyrocketed all of a sudden, turning into three blurs as they chased. Jian Chen's linear lightning release was very fast, but the amount of time he could maintain it was far too short. They were unable to evade the senses of a god king's soul in such a short amount of time. As a result, even though Jian Chen and Kaya managed to flee to a point where the god kings were no longer able to see them, they still remained in the area the god king's senses of the soul covered. Over 100,000 kilometers away, the light around Jian Chen and Kaya slowly faded, and their terrifying speed brought on by the linear lightning release vanished. The three god kings had vanished behind them. However, they knew that they still had not shaken off the three god kings. As a matter of fact, they could even sense three extremely powerful presences rush over in the distance. They would be able to catch up in under a minute. Jian Chen, what do we do now? Kaya broke free from Jian Chen's arm without showing any repulsion and said worriedly. Go dash. Just when Jian Chen wanted to talk, he aggravated his wounds, so he experienced a violent fit of coughing. A few more mouthfuls of blood and organs spurted out from his mouth. Even though he had only clashed once with the two god kings, his opponents were late god kings after all. Jian Chen suffered severe wounds from that. If it were not for his chaotic body, he would have collapsed long ago. Jian Chen, how are you? You better heal first. I'll carry you, Kaya said in concern. Jian Chen shook his head. He silently circulated his chaotic force to heal as he wolfed down a handful of healing pills and several soul recovery pills. Only then did he say with great difficulty and weakness, "You're not as fast as them. Right now, the only way we can travel is for me to use my sword technique. Only then do we have a chance at escaping. As long as we make it to the divine kingdom of Qingyang, we can shake them off. Let's go." Jian Chen wrapped his left hand around Kaya once again while he formed a seal with his right hand, continuing to cast the linear lightning release. Faced with such desperate times, he could no longer care about the bodily contact between men and women. Escaping from the three god kings was more important than anything. Kaiya's feelings became extremely mixed. She would experience severe repulsion when Jian Chen touched her like that. However, when she thought about the danger the two of them faced today, she could only suppress this repulsion helplessly. Swish! As Kaiya experienced mixed feelings, she and Jian Chen became surrounded with light once again. They shot off into the distance with lightning speed, covering several tens of thousand kilometers in a split second. They truly moved extremely quickly. With their speed, even late god kings would struggle to catch up. Even though the three god kings had already used secret techniques, they were still unable to traverse several tens of thousand kilometers in a split second. However, Jian Chen's linear lightning release was not perfect either. He was unable to maintain it for long, unlike the three god kings behind them who could maintain their greatest speed over prolonged periods. As a result, every time Jian Chen stopped after using the linear lightning release, the distance he had created from the god kings would be covered once again. This forced Jian Chen to use the linear lightning release constantly. Fortunately, his chaotic force was consumed extremely slowly. Moreover, he had never run out of energy during a battle due to it being overly drawn out after he began cultivating the chaotic body. Otherwise, he would probably run out of energy from just using the linear lightning release repeatedly as a late-over god. The earth stretched into the distance, and the rivers and mountains rapidly receded. As the two parties fled and pursued, they left the divine kingdom of Pingtian very soon, entering the boundary of the divine kingdom of Qingyang. As they fled, Jian Chen's wounds rapidly recovered thanks to the terrifying automatic regeneration of the chaotic body. Even though he devoted all his efforts to fleeing, his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, they gradually improved. Kaiya's wounds took an evident turn for the better after ingesting the healing pills as well. Jian Chen did not slow down. After entering the divine kingdom of Qinyan, he quickly found his bearings and shot off with the linear lightning release again. Behind them, the three god kings tailed closely. However, they maintained a distance of several tens of thousand kilometers throughout, unable to cover it. Even though it seemed extremely distant, experts like them could cover such a distance in under 10 seconds. As a result, Jian Chen did not dare to relax. Before long, Jian Chen arrived in a remote mountain range within the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He took Kaiya to a hidden valley with great familiarity and directly sent a strand of sword qi at a smooth rock face. With a boom, the wall was destroyed, revealing a cave. With a flash, Jian Chen entered the gloomy cave with Kaiya. He made his way to the end of the cave as quickly as possible. There laid a perfect teleportation formation on the ground. At the same time, a terrifying pressure appeared, causing all the mountains to tremor. Now that Jian Chen and Kaiya had slowed down, the three god kings caught up immediately. They moved extremely quickly, where they had even become visible on the horizon as black specks. Jian Chen was grim. Immediately, he entered the teleportation formation with Kaiya, and with a wave of his hand, he tossed out a few divine crystals to activate it. The two of them vanished silently under an intense white light. However, just when they were about to be transported away, Jian Chen tossed out a fist-sized transparent crystal suddenly. When he and Kaiya had completely vanished, the crystal exploded loudly. Not only did it destroy the teleportation formation on the ground completely, but even the cave collapsed. The three god kings arrived before the collapsed cave with sunken faces. They've already fled through a teleportation formation, but the formation is not of a particularly high quality, so they can't be far. They shouldn't have escaped from the range of the senses of our souls yet, a god king growled as demonic aura churned around him. The three of them immediately expanded the senses of their soul as much as possible to search for the traces of Jian Chen and Kaiya. Jian Chen and Kaiya had already appeared in an ancient mountain range within the divine kingdom of Datian. A perfect teleportation formation laid there as well. Jian Chen had cast down this teleportation formation after killing the 3 overgods from the Empyrean demon cult personally. He created it as a path of retreat for the Tian Yuan clan. However, he had never thought that the teleportation formations he cast down in the past would not be used by people from the Tian Yuan clan. Instead, it would serve as a path of survival for himself. I never thought there was such a well-hidden teleportation formation in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. Thank God for it, or it would have been almost impossible to escape from the 3 god kings. Kaya patted her chest within the gloomy cave as she said in lingering fear. She looked at Jian Chen and asked, "Jian Chen, where are we right now? We should have escaped from the 3 god kings, right?" Jian Chen remained grim. He shook his head in response to Kaya and said, "We're currently in the divine kingdom of Datian. Although it's extremely distant from the divine kingdom of Qingyang, they're god kings after all and late god kings at that. Their senses of the soul are so powerful that they can engulf an entire divine kingdom without any effort. As a result, we still haven't escaped from the range of their senses with where we are right now." However, when Jian Chen finished talking, their faces both changed. At that moment, they could clearly sense extremely powerful senses of the soul sweep over. Just the pressure from the senses made them feel like they bore mountains on their backs. "They've already found us. Let's keep teleporting. I'd like to see if the senses of late god kings can extend from the divine kingdom of Qingyang to the heavenly moon empire," Jian Chen said coldly. He pulled Kaya into the teleportation formation and activated it again, leaving the cave. Like before, Jian Chen destroyed the teleportation in the divine kingdom of Datian when they left to prevent the 3 god kings from using it. As a result, the 3 god kings could only slowly fly their way to the heavenly moon empire if they wanted to catch them. Although god kings flew extremely quickly, where it would not take them very long at all to make it to the heavenly moon empire, this was extremely valuable time to Jian Chen. The Divine King was still engaged in an intense battle against Huayan in outer space. Sword Qi crisscrossed the space with surprising sword intent. Each strand of sword Qi was blinding, shooting off like galaxies with devastating power. The Divine King was still engaged in an intense battle against Huayan in outer space. Sword Qi crisscrossed the space with surprising sword intent. Each strand of sword Qi was blinding, shooting off like galaxies with devastating power. The Divine King was a primordial realm expert, and his laws of the sword had reached sword immortal. Sword Qi permeated his surroundings, revolving around him like countless illusionary swords. Right now, he seemed like an immortal of the sword. It was like he possesses a certain ethereal lightness. On the other side, Huayan churned with demonic aura. His laws of darkness swallowed all light, causing the celestial bodies to dim. It clashed time and time again with the Divine King's laws of the sword. The two of them seemed to be locked in an extremely intense battle, but they did not try to claim each other's lives in reality. However, even with that being the case, the battle was still devastating. It caused space to distort and turned it into a mess. They kept each other busy so that neither of them would have the energy to worry about Jian Chen. The Divine King had already reached the limits of what he could do. He was no longer able to do anything about the 3 god kings who chased Jian Chen. Right now, the heritage of the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian was simply far too shallow. Even though they possessed a primordial realm expert, they only possessed a single god king, the Grand Imperial Protector. Moreover, the Grand Imperial Protector was only an early god king. He was completely useless to the dangers that Jian Chen faced. Through the teleportation formation, Jian Chen had successfully arrived in the Heavenly Moon Empire now. After destroying the teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire, he and Kaya shot towards the imperial capital with lightning speed. Along the way, Jian Chen swallowed a few more healing pills. Coupled with the regeneration of his chaotic body, he recovered as quickly as possible. Kaya also wolfed down pills to heal as she fled as quickly as she could with Jian Chen. Jian Chen, where are we going next? Kaya asked. After coming to the Saint's world, this was the first time she had left the Dong'an province. Moreover, 3 experts were hunting her down, so she completely had no idea because she was unfamiliar with the Saint's world. After some thought, Jian Chen replied, the Empyrean demon cult has their eyes on us now. We definitely can't return to the Tianyuan clan, so we can only flee to further places so that we can completely shake them off. Our greatest enemy is not the 3 god kings, but one of the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult, Huaiyan. Although Huaiyan is busy with the divine king, that won't last for too long. As a result, we need to find a way to escape from Huaiyan. With that, the light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He furrowed his brows in thought for a while before making up his mind. He said, let's go to the Blood Sun Empire. Before long, Jian Chen and Kaya arrived in the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Without even spending a second longer there than necessary, they paid quite a hefty price and were teleported away to the Blood Sun Empire. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region. Their status was supreme, and their authority in the southern region was equivalent to the Xi Empire's authority in the northern region. They were the ultimate existence. Currently, Huaiyan targeted Jian Chen, so if there were any places that a primordial realm expert like Huaiyan would fear, there would only be the eternal Blood Sun Empire. At the same time, in the imperial palace of the Xi Empire, a beautiful but troubled woman who seemed to be in her 20s sat within a pavilion in the imperial gardens. She stared at the embroidered box she had placed on the stone table there and sighed constantly. This woman was Princess Tian of the Xi Empire. Sigh, it has already been so long, and I've yet to complete Jian Chen's request. What do I do? Princess Tian murmured. She stared at the box on the table remotely as worry filled her face. It's all my fault. I didn't think too much of it when I agreed to Jian Chen's request. I thought it would be a piece of cake, where I could complete it easily. I never thought it would actually be so difficult now that I've tried it. I probably can't even take out the box in front of Aunt with her temperament, while I've never found a chance to give it to Uncle. The princess supported her chin with her hands as she sat in the garden, sighing powerlessly. Now, the box had basically become something that burdened her heart. After all, she had agreed to Jian Chen's request in the past. If she did not give the box to the Empress or the Emperor, she would not be able to find any ease. Sister Tian, what are you doing here all by yourself? And why are you staring at this box in a daze? What's in the box? At this moment, a rather mischievous giggle rang out from behind the princess. An eccentric girl who seemed to be 15 or 16 years in age stood behind Princess Tian in imperial robes. She smiled faintly, and her bright eyes moved about, filled with energy and mischief. Then, she arrived on the other side of the stone table in a flash and picked up the box. She giggled, Sister Tian, is the item in here a gift for Bing'er? Bing'er is rather eager to see what it is. As she said that, the girl called Bing'er opened the box without any hesitation at all. Bing'er, do not. That belongs to someone else, Princess Tian spoke out, but she was already too late to stop her. Bing'er had already opened the box. There were no priceless treasures within the box. It only held an extremely simple jade pendant. Bing'er was surprised as she looked at the object in the box. Her curiosity instantly turned into great disappointment. She picked up the jade pendant and glanced at it very casually before pouting, what is this? Why is such a simple jade pendant stored in such a great box? So much for getting me to think that it was something good. Bing'er, don't you know how to behave? Princess Tian frowned and lectured Bing'er unhappily. Even though she was stern, there was a sliver of adoration for Bing'er in her eyes. As she said that, Princess Tian snatched the jade pendant from Bing'er's hand. She could not help but study it herself. She had always been extremely curious about what the box held as well. After all, Jian Chen had stressed that it was a gift she had to give to the Empress or the Emperor personally. Evidently, the item inside would be extremely important. However, when Princess Tian looked at the jade pendant in her hand, she felt extremely doubtful and confused. She could tell that the jade pendant was nothing precious. It was made from extremely simple materials, and it would not raise any attention if it was just laid down somewhere in the imperial palace. The only thing that did catch some attention was the extremely exquisite and beautiful patterning on the jade pendant. However, the two words, Xiu, carved on there perplexed the princess slightly. So this is the item that Jian Chen needed me to give to uncle or aunt personally? Princess Tian became covered in cold sweat from shock. At that moment, she felt extremely fortunate that Bing'er had opened the box, allowing her to know what it held. Otherwise, it would have been humiliating if she had really given such a simple jade pendant to her aunt or uncle. Even if her aunt or uncle did not take offense, she would be completely embarrassed. Sienna. At this moment, a somewhat dignified voice rang out. The graceful empress appeared within the imperial gardens and slowly made her way towards Princess Tian. Ah! Aunt! Princess Tian was taken aback. She turned around to glance at the empress who slowly made her way over before she thought about the opened box on the stone table. Immediately, she felt rather flustered. However, she seemed to fail to realize that the jade pendant from the box was still in her hand. Bing'er greets the empress. The girl called Bing'er stopped acting mischievously and bowed towards the empress politely. Before the empress, she was unable to behave as naturally as Princess Tian. She was extremely nervous. The empress looked at Princess Tian gently. Just when she was about to say something, she suddenly saw the jade pendant in the princess' hand. The empress abruptly quivered, and her face changed all of a sudden as well. Her beautiful, phoenix-like eyes seemed to freeze up as they became fixed on the jade pendant in Princess Tian's hands. In the next moment, the empress moved slightly and appeared before Princess Tian like she had teleported. Before the princess could return to her senses, the empress had grabbed the jade pendant from the princess' hand and studied it carefully. In the next moment, the empress moved slightly and appeared before Princess Tian like she had teleported. Before the princess could return to her senses, the empress had grabbed the jade pendant from the princess' hand and studied it carefully. Even though the pendant was made from something extremely simple, the exquisite carvings on it made the empress' cold heart beat heavily. In particular, when she saw the two words, Xiu, engraved on the pendant, her hand that held it began to shake involuntarily. She could not be more familiar with the pendant. As a matter of fact, the appearance of the pendant, the exquisite carvings and the engraved words, had already formed a brand that was stamped deeply into her soul. She would never forget it in her life. This was because when she and Shi Ziyun had been hunted down by enemies and were forced to abandon their daughter, they had left a jade pendant exactly like this one with her. They did this so that they would be able to identify her in the future. Even though the material was different, everything else was the same as the pendant she had left behind in the past. It was exactly the same. Sienna, where did you get this jade pendant? Tears shone in the empress' eyes as her trembling voice was filled with urgency. There was raw excitement in there that anyone could detect. In that moment, the empress' immovable heart seemed to explode like a volcano. Her feelings churned violently as she struggled to remain calm. For all these years, she and the Shi Emperor had been deeply concerned, basically thinking about their daughter at all times. They had even sent people to search for her secretly during these 2 millennia, but they received no news at all. As time went on, their missing daughter basically turned into anxiety for the couple, making them experience eternal pain. This was because they had failed to find any leads in these 2,000 years. In a brutal world where power was everything, the two of them had no idea whether their daughter was still alive or not. However, now that the empress who had almost become despaired suddenly saw a jade pendant similar to the one she had left with her daughter, the flames of hope were reignited. She had suddenly found a lead regarding the daughter she had lost for 2,000 years. This great surprise left the empress overjoyed. Princess Tian stared at her emotional aunt in a daze. She felt very confused. She simply could not understand how a simple jade pendant could make her cold aunt react with such intensity. As for Binger, she had become completely stunned. She stared at the empress blankly as shock filled her face. In that moment, she even began to suspect that the empress she saw was an impostor. This was because in her memory, the empress was cold and proud, making her unapproachable. She would treat everyone icily, and she would only be amiable when she saw Sister Tian. Yet now, she actually saw tears in the empress' eyes and joy on the empress' face. This was very unbelievable for Binger. Even though Princess Tian was very confused, she still asked, "Aunt, do you remember the Supreme Overgod I mentioned to you before? That Supreme Overgod gave me the box, and he got me to deliver it to you or Uncle personally. The jade pendant was the only thing in the box." What? The jade pendant was actually the item in the box. Regret filled the empress' face. Naturally, she could remember the matter with the box. Originally, she did not care about the gift of an overgod at all, but she had never thought that the item inside would connect her to the daughter she had lost over 2,000 years ago. "No, I have to tell Ziyun something this important." The empress vanished, leaving behind the confused Princess Tian and Binger standing in the garden. In a majestic courtroom, the Shi Emperor in dragon robes currently sat on the emperor's throne as he managed the affairs of the empire. Below him stood many subjects and officials. They all showed respect. "Ziyun, Ziyun," at this moment, the empress' voice rang out. She held the jade pendant in her hand as she shot over as a blur, attracting the attention of all the officials. "Xianer, why are you so flustered?" The Shi Emperor looked at the empress in confusion from his throne. "Ziyun, look," the empress directly passed the pendant to the emperor after arriving before him. When the Shi Emperor saw the jade pendant, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He shot up from his throne as his terrifying presence erupted from his body without control. Like a turbulent wave, it wreaked havoc in the courtroom, forcing back all the officials and subjects. "Where did this jade pendant come from?" the Shi Emperor asked in both an excited and trembling voice. He was the mighty Shi Emperor, yet he struggled to control his emotions at this moment. The empress explained the origins of the jade pendant in a few short sentences. "Let's go. Let's go see Xianer." After learning where the jade pendant came from, the Shi Emperor was even more hurried than the empress. He did not even bother to conclude the meeting of officials and directly disappeared from the courtroom with the empress, leaving behind the officials to look at one another. Princess Tian and Binger remained stunned in the imperial gardens. Clearly, they still had not returned to their senses. At this moment, there was a flash, and the dignified Shi Emperor and the empress appeared beside Princess Tian like they had teleported. "Xianer, where is the Jianchen who gave you the jade pendant?" the Shi Emperor asked directly. His face was filled with a sense of urgency. "Ah, uncle." Only now did the princess return to her senses. She looked at the Shi Emperor that had suddenly appeared before her and was stunned once again. However, she responded very quickly, "Uncle, aunt, when Jianchen gave me the jade talisman, he was still in the Xiandao Empire. I am uncertain as to where he is right now. Let's go to the Xiandao Empire." The Shi Emperor moved swiftly, immediately leaving the Shi Empire with Princess Tian and the Empress to go to the Xiandao Empire. The Shi Emperor's group was naturally fairly impressive since he was leaving the empire. 2 primordial realm subjects followed him along. After finding a lead on his daughter, the Shi Emperor was clearly nervous from worry. He had gone as far as to move personally, using his supreme cultivation as a chaotic prime to hurry everyone along. He basically tread through worlds, where they would flash past with each step. In just 5 or 6 steps, he had covered a tremendous distance and directly arrived above the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. The personal arrival of the Xi Emperor shocked the entire Xiandao Empire. All the primordial realm experts in the empire emerged from seclusion, welcoming him politely. Aside from Tian Shuang, there were 2 ruddy old men among the primordial realm experts of the Xiandao Empire. They currently bowed towards the Xi Emperor as they felt uneasy inside. In the past few years, the Xi Emperor had made a name for himself from all the killing he did, so the Xi Emperor's arrival had unsettled the 3 primordial realm experts. They all recalled the past to see whether they had actually taken part in the hunt or not. Is Jian Chen in your Xiandao Empire? However, to the 3 primordial realm experts' surprise, the Xi Emperor asked for a person called Jian Chen right from the start. The 2 ruddy old men become doubtful when they heard the name. A gleam of light flickered through Tian Shuang's eyes, and she said after some thought, Xi Emperor, Jian Chen has already left our Xiandao Empire. If I recall correctly, he should be in a place called the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region. The southern region, the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, the Xi Emperor murmured before clasping his hands at Tian Shuang in gratitude. Immediately, he set off for the southern region with everyone. The Xi Emperor did not take a teleportation formation. With his cultivation as a chaotic prime, he would even be faster than a teleportation formation if he moved through the cloud plane by himself. Several figures flew through the sky with lightning speed above the Dong'an province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, directly flying into the provincial city and stopping above the Tian Yuan clan. The person at the front seemed to be in his 40s. He wore violet and gold robes, and he seemed rather dignified. He looked at the Tian Yuan clan from above coldly. This middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Eternal Blood Sun Empire. According to the information the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect provided, he had directly come to the Tian Yuan clan. 9th prince, the Tian Yuan clan is only a small clan. Are they really connected to the loss of the Flower of Ways? A god king asked carefully from behind the 9th prince. The 9th prince hovered in the air and stared at the Tian Yuan clan emotionlessly. He said, the person from the Earth Spirit sect told me anonymously through the jade slip that several decades ago, Jian Chen assisted the soul of a primordial realm expert to obtain a few things Duanmu left behind in his dwelling, which also allowed her to recover her body. At that time, the primordial realm expert was only an over-god after recovering her body. And recently, Jian Chen caught the eyes of the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean demon cult, Yashi Lian. A primordial realm expert saved him in the end and even Yashi Lian was captured. It's extremely likely that this primordial realm expert is the one who had recovered her body under Jian Chen's help in God King Duanmu's dwelling. The 9th prince stood with his arms crossed and said slowly, even if a soul that has newly forged a body was once a primordial realm expert, it's impossible for them to recover so rapidly, unless they use extremely precious heavenly resources. The Flower of Ways just happens to be an extremely precious heavenly resource. As a result, I can basically conclude that the person who stole the Flower of Ways is the primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen. With that, the 9th prince's face darkened and killing intent appeared in his eyes. He had already realized that the Flower of Ways had probably already been ingested, but he needed to make someone pay. This was because without the Flower of Ways, it would take him forever to reach the primordial realm. Even with his extraordinary talent, overcoming the bottleneck between godhood and the primordial realm was still difficult. The 9th prince became more furious the more he thought about it. In the end, it transformed into raging killing intent, and he directly hurled at punch at the Tian Yuan clan. Boom! The entire provincial city rumbled loudly, and the God King level formation that had been recently cast down over the Tian Yuan clan completely collapsed from the 9th prince's punch. The formation was only enough to stop attacks from early God Kings, while the 9th prince had already reached the peak of God King. He was preparing to break through to the primordial realm. It was impossible for the formation to stop him. With the destruction of the formation, the Tian Yuan clan was clearly exposed. With the destruction of the formation, the Tian Yuan clan was clearly exposed. However, the Tian Yuan clan was no longer in perfect condition. The ninth prince's attack was simply too powerful. Not only did it destroy the formation, but the powerful shockwaves of energy had also destroyed a third of the clan. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. If it were not for the protective formation that blocked most of the ninth prince's attack, probably the entire Tian Yuan clan would have been devastated by the ninth prince. However, even with that being the case, many of the weaker servants and guards in the Tian Yuan clan were affected by the shockwave and became heavily injured. The sudden occurrence had thrown the entire Tian Yuan clan into a mess. Many people ran about frantically. They all paled when they saw how the God King level formation had already collapsed. Shiyu, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the other elders currently gathered together as they stared at the sky sternly. Even Sacred Feather, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, Hei Yu, and the people from the world of Forsaken Saints emerged from the Forbidden Grounds. Seeing the ruined formations in the surroundings, they became extremely grim. They all knew that the protective formation around the Tian Yuan clan was at the level of God Kings. There was both a trapping and killing formation there, so in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian, it could be regarded as extremely powerful. Yet, when they saw the tough formation shatter without any prior signs, they realized just how powerful the offender was. May I ask how our Tian Yuan clan has offended the seniors, where the seniors have to shatter our protective formation? Shiyu said coldly from the Tian Yuan clan as she stared at the ninth prince's group. Sacred Feather arrived beside Shiyu as well. He stared at the people in the sky emotionlessly as a vicious light shone through his sharp gaze. The other elders of the Tian Yuan clan stood behind Shiyu and Sacred Feather. They were the only two overgods left in the Tian Yuan clan now. The face of a god king behind the ninth prince immediately sank when he heard Shiyu's cold questioning. He called out, "How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to? This is the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Why don't you kneel in greeting now that the ninth prince is here?" The expressions of all the people in the Tian Yuan clan changed when they heard that. They could not help but look at each other. Many of them felt doubtful. They had no idea when the Tian Yuan clan had offended the ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Shiyu's heart sank all of a sudden. The ninth prince had come with ill intentions, which made her feel that something bad was going to happen. Offending the Blood Sun Empire would result in consequences that were even worse than offending the Empyrean demon cult. The Blood Sun Empire was the ruler of the southern region, possessing a supreme status there. Before it, even the ancient empires with rich heritages like the Heavenly Moon Empire had to behave submissively. "Which one of you is Patriarch Jian Chen?" The ninth prince asked with a sunken face. His voice was icy cold. "Your Highness, very unfortunately, the Patriarch is not in the clan right now," Shiyu responded emotionlessly with a clasped fist. "Not here?" A vicious light flickered through the ninth prince's eyes. Just when he wanted to say something, his face changed suddenly, and his eyes instantly became filled with heavy, cold killing intent. Raising his hand, terrifying energy gathered, instantly condensing into a huge hand that fell onto the forbidden grounds of the Tian Yuan clan. Boom! The ground shook violently. The ninth prince had directly used his energy hand to wrench out a secret room hidden beneath the forbidden grounds. The tough room shattered in the ninth prince's hands. This room was where newbies cultivated in seclusion. With the secret room destroyed, newbies naturally fell out. At the same time, a golden-striped silver snake that was several thousand meters in length but only as thick as a wrist appeared as well. The golden-striped silver snake had lost all its presence of life, and most of its vital essence was gone as well. Consequently, it appeared to be slightly shriveled now. When the god kings who had come with the ninth prince saw the corpse of the snake, their faces all changed. Killing intent surged from all of them uncontrollably. No wonder we couldn't find Jin Mang's corpse in the Yin Mountains of Seven's Despair. You've brought him here. The loss of the Flower of Ways is indeed related to your Tian Yuan clan. The Tian Yuan clan sure is bold to even eye the items of the ninth prince. Such crimes are so great that even destroying the entire clan won't be enough. The god kings behind the ninth prince all spoke out coldly as they gave off killing intent. They were tempted to destroy the Tian Yuan clan instantly. As for the ninth prince, his face became extremely sunken when he stared at the corpse of the golden-striped silver snake. He had already become furious as killing intent built up inside. If he doubted Jian Chen a little before, he was extremely confident about his guess now that he had seen the corpse of the snake. Nubis stood up from the ground in a disheveled manner. He was slightly confused, but soon afterwards, he heard the furious shouts of the god kings, allowing him to understand what had happened. His face immediately became ugly. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared. A god king behind the ninth prince arrived before Nubis instantly and gripped his throat tightly. The light in the god king's eyes shone viciously as killing intent surged. He said frigidly, "How dare you absorb Jin Mang's essence? Jin Mang serves the ninth prince, yet you've treated his corpse like this. I will let you come begging to me for death." As he said that, the god king's hand clamped down. With a crisp crack, Nubis' neck was reduced to pieces. Even though Nubis had risen from being a god to early over-god after absorbing some of the essence from Jin Mang, he was still extremely puny before a god king. He was unable to put up any resistance at all. Afterwards, the god king grabbed the top of Nubis' head in an attempt to forcefully draw his soul from his body. Nubis' eyes dilated. He watched the god king's hand approach him as regret filled his eyes. He resisted with his full strength, but due to the huge difference in strength, it was a futile effort. Will I, the great Nubis, die just like this? No, I refuse. I refuse. I've only just come to the saints' world. I've yet to see all the scenery the saints' world has to offer. I still haven't reached the limit of my cultivation path, Nubis roared out inside. Before the threat of life and death, his instincts for survival stimulated all his potential. At that moment, the blood in his body flowed hundreds of times faster than usual. On his face, his arms, and every inch of his body, the blood vessels that were hidden underneath his skin bulged as a faint golden light flowed in there. At this moment, Nubis could clearly feel the power of his bloodline rapidly strengthen, making him feel like energy surged through his entire body. However, it was still not enough to change the situation. Even after his bloodline had strengthened, and his battle prowess had increased, it was still not enough for him to escape from a god king. After all, he was only an early over-god right now. However, at that moment, Sacred Feather struck out. He instantly reverted to his original form, and a huge, white tiger hovered in the sky. It possessed 2 wings and was glorious. Extremely strong killing intent condensed on Sacred Feather, along with the force of slaughter. He raised his 2 wings high, and they fused into a blade. It slashed out with the killing intent from Sacred Feather. Extremely strong killing intent condensed on Sacred Feather, along with the force of slaughter. He raised his 2 wings high, and they fused into a blade. It slashed out with the killing intent from Sacred Feather. Sacred Feather struck out with his full strength against the God King. All his strength surged out without holding back anything. His presence was overwhelming. Even though he was only an early over-god, he was a Sacred Feather Tiger Emperor. His bloodline was extremely powerful. Coupled with the way of slaughter he had comprehended, his strike was extremely powerful. It had surpassed the amount of strength he should have been able to use right now. The God King, who grabbed Nubis by the neck and was just about to wrench out his soul in a brutal method, sneered disdainfully when he sensed Sacred Feather's attack. He scorned, "An ant dares to stand up against a tiger? Die." With that, the God King's hand that had originally reached towards Nubis' head suddenly extended towards Sacred Feather's wings. Sacred Feather had condensed all his power into his wings. The power of the ways of slaughter had been condensed there as well. However, when his full-powered attack came in contact with the God King's hand, it was gripped tightly. The power within was unable to harm his opponent at all. It's actually the ways of slaughter. Impressive, the laws you've comprehended are very powerful. Unfortunately, your cultivation is just too weak, the God King said coldly. He looked at Sacred Feather coldly, and his hand tremored. An energy that was devastating to overgods struck Sacred Feather mercilessly. A bloody mist spurted out from Sacred Feather's mouth as he was knocked away powerlessly. His wings constantly cracked as white feathers floated in the sky. Sacred Feather's wings collapsed powerlessly. Not only did they turn red from the blood, but even his body had been dyed red. A God King strike was powerful. Although Sacred Feather's bloodline was powerful, it was unable to make up for the huge difference in strength between an overgod and a God King. Just a single attack had rendered him heavily injured. Sacred Feather. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all called out. They arrived before Sacred Feather with a single step. Worry filled their faces as they immediately fed healing pills to Sacred Feather. "Humph, has His Highness allowed you to save him?" A God King behind the 9th prince said coldly. He gently closed his hand, and the space around the three of them immediately froze up. This God King had comprehended the laws of space. He could trap a whole region of space with a single thought. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were all immobilized. Before a God King who had comprehended the laws of space, they did not even have the power to blink. A pained grunt rang out. The God King who held Nubis by the neck had already pressed his right hand onto Nubis' head. His face was extremely vicious as he formed a claw with his fingers. They had already dug into Nubis' skin, slowly penetrating his skull. Blood that shone with golden light flowed from the top of Nubis' head, dripping down his face. The God King's hand slowly approached Nubis' soul. Even though Nubis' bloodline had evolved and strengthened through his great unwillingness to die, it could only become as powerful as the bloodline of Sacred Feather Tiger Emperors at most. Even Sacred Feather was unable to withstand a single attack from a God King, let alone him. Even though the people in the Tian Yuan clan were furious when they saw Nubis' situation, they really did not have anything that they could use to fend off a God King. At that moment, helplessness filled all of them. This made Xiu absolutely furious. Rage filled her inside. Just as the God King was about to touch Nubis' soul, resolution suddenly appeared in her eyes. She ignored her personal safety and struck out fearlessly with determination. Jian Chen had granted her a fortune out of kindness. Now that the Tian Yuan clan faced a disaster and the life of Jian Chen's friend, Nubis, was in danger, she could not just stand by and watch this tragedy unfold as if she was unconcerned about the matter. Xiu wielded a sword that shone beautifully. She fused with it and slashed at the arm of the God King. "Humph, the Tian Yuan clan sure has quite a few people who overestimate themselves," the God King who held Nubis sneered. He turned around to look at Xiu and blew out a mouthful of air. Whoosh! With that, a huge gale immediately appeared. Terrifying energy surged out from the God King's mouth, striking Xiu with terrifying might. Xiu came to a halt, but that was not all. Before the storm of energy, she could not help but retreat. "Tell me, where is Jian Chen? If you don't, I'll kill the four of them first," the God King who controlled the laws of space said coldly. As his hand gradually tightened, the space around Rui Jin and the others creaked audibly. Under the God King's control, the space there had visibly compressed. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu, who were trapped in the space there, were compressed as well. Their clothes pressed tightly against their bodies as they resisted the compression. The pressure from all directions had made their bodies shrink visibly. Under the tremendous pressure, blood oozed from the pores of their bodies, dyeing their clothes red. If this continued, the three of them would burst to death. However, the three of them were unable to do anything about it. No, it shouldn't just be the four of them. It should include these people as well, the God King who controlled the laws of space said inattentively. He gently extended a hand towards the upper echelon of the Tian Yuan clan. Instantly, the space behind Shiyu froze as well. All the important members of the Tian Yuan clan had been trapped in space. Among them included the ancestor of the previous Mo clan, Mo Ling, Shiyu's foster father, and even Mo Yen. The entire Tian Yuan clan had become speechless. The arrival of the ninth prince and his people were like the shade of death, looming over the clan. Arg! Shiyu's body trembled at this sight. Suddenly, she bellowed out, and flames expanded from her body. The flames did not give off any heat, but with the appearance of them, her presence actually skyrocketed. It surpassed early Overgod very soon and reached a higher level. However, even though Shiyu's presence rose, and she had become stronger, her vitality weakened at a visible rate. Her long, black hair paled rapidly, becoming gray, and then snow-white. The situation of the Tian Yuan clan had stimulated Shiyu greatly, to the point where she would even go as far as to burn her own life and soul for greater strength. Currently, flames burned around Shiyu as her snow-white hair danced. She gave off an extremely terrifying presence. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.